This is Atomic Shinobi and today I'm going to narrate second and final part of What If Naruto Never Learned Shadow Clone Jutsu. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
As Naruto returned home, he discovered Kushina polishing one of her katanas. He called out, "Hey mom," as soon as he entered. Kushina said, "Naruto, how'd you do? Made it to the finals." Naruto laughed. "I have 1 month before they start, so I need some serious training." As someone knocked on the door, Kushina said, "I see. Well, I could be of some help, but first have something to eat first." Wonder who that could be. When Naruto heard Kushina exclaim with delight, he began heaping various items onto a plate as Kushina approached the door. She exclaimed, "Jiraiya," before the man let out a cry of agony. He shouted, "What was that for?" "That was for sneaking your smut into my house again." Kushina yelled. "Naruto, there's someone I'd like you to meet." As Naruto approached the front hall, he noticed a man standing there who was a good foot taller than him. Naruto glanced at him quickly, observing everything from his equipment to his overall appearance, and was not impressed. "This is the guy that trained Dad," Naruto said. "I was expecting something more." "More what?" Jiraiya responded, "Wherever I go, women fawn and men envy, I am." Jiraiya scowled at Naruto as he grinned and said, "A blowhard." Jiraiya looked at Kushina and sighed, "Definitely your kid. No one else's would give me such disrespect." Kushina smiled and gestured for him to enter the kitchen, saying, "There isn't much respect to be had when you make a living writing smut and peeping on girls." "So I heard from Sarutobi Sensei that Naruto has made it to the finals of the Chunin exams," Jiraiya replied. Naruto answered, "Yeah, but I've got some tough competition." "So I heard, a swordsman from Kirigakure could be a challenge, but don't you have your own sword?" "Had. Some crazy Kusanin had a stronger sword hiding down her throat and destroyed mine," Naruto murmured. Jiraiya whispered, "Did she also attack Sasuke Uchiha? Sword down her throat?" Naruto nodded and said, "Yep. Bit his neck and left some weird mark. I was worried about that. That wasn't a woman, that was Orochimaru of the Sannin, my old teammate." Jiraiya said, "This could be trouble brewing." Naruto exclaimed, "Whoa, I fought a Sannin and lived?" "Apparently." Jiraiya laughed, "But you got lucky that he was distracted and not interested in fighting you all out." Kushina whispered, "So Orochimaru is back, does Oji know?" "I'm sure that Kakashi informed him. At the moment Sasuke is being placed under surveillance until we're sure that the mark isn't going to be a problem." Jiraiya clarified, "But back to the original topic, if you want Naruto, I can train you for the finals." "Really?" inquired Naruto. "Yep. I should be able to help you crush anyone that you get put up against." Jiraiya nodded. "So first we need to get you a new sword. How about Glory of 10 Powers? It's a single-sided blade that was forged across the sea, and is said to have mystical powers." "No. It needs to be a katana, that's what I know how to use and what my style of kenjutsu uses," Naruto nodded. "Okay. How about Masamune or Muramasa? They're two swords made by rival swordsmiths. One is meant for bloodshed while the other for peace," Jiraiya put forward. "That's kind of a problem, since my sword is used for both," said Naruto. "Alright, there is another one called Katetsu. It's a sword made hundreds of years ago that is next to indestructible due to the man who forged it had a koton, steel release. Kekkei Genkei. It's been kept by a monk who lives on the edge of Hai no Kuni." Jiraiya went on to say, "It is said to be a peerless weapon, compared to Kusanagi." At last, Naruto nodded, thinking, "Really, let's go get it." "Alright, but to warn you, the monk won't just give us this sword, you will have to complete some form of trial." Jiraiya issued a warning. Naruto went upstairs to back some equipment and said, "Okay, but I can't go into the next matches without a blade." "You sure this is a good idea?" Kushina inquired. "It's the best we got," Jiraiya replied. "He is already ahead of the curve, so I'm not too worried about him going without it, but he does need a new sword and this is one of the best ways to get one." At that moment, Naruto dashed back down the steps. He exclaimed, "Okay, let's go, Arrow, Sennin," as he left through the front door. As Jiraiya muttered, "Damn Gaki," Kushina called, "Oh, and Jiraiya." "Yes?" Kushina grinned as Jiraiya nodded and went pale. "If you take my son on a research trip with you, I will personally rip your head off and shove it up your ass." It was not long before they left and headed for the temple where the monk was. Knowing that Ichigo had his kenjutsu and taijutsu on his side and that Sasuke would probably be his next opponent, Naruto considered the different scenarios he might encounter as they leapt through the trees. Ninjutsu and taijutsu would be the primary components. After that, he guessed that it would probably be Shino or Hinata, but it was a gamble because there were so many options. They arrived at the temple, which was tucked away between a mountain's peaks, after spending the majority of the afternoon there. Naruto sensed his bond with Kyuubi waning as they ascended past a number of statues. "Hey Jiraiya, I can't feel Kyuubi," Naruto said, a bit anxiously. "It's the statues. It's meant to ward off demons from this place. So Jinchuruki like yourself will have to rely on their own skills instead of their demons." Jiraiya clarified when they finally got to the temple. "Okay, head on inside and you'll find the monk. He'll tell you what he wants you to do." Naruto said, "You're not coming with?" "No, this is your trial. I'm just here to make sure that you get home okay. No, don't take too long. I still have other things that I want to teach you." Jiraiya responded. Naruto nodded as he proceeded along the path and soon found himself inside the temple, where he observed a monk sitting in front of a statue and engaging in meditation. Naruto walked up to the monk and said, "Pardon me." Before he spoke, the man turned to face the blonde and took him in. "Another pilgrim seeks Katetsu?" Naruto nodded, "I do." "Very well. The trial is to simply get to the blade. But be warned, many have tried before you and have never been seen again." Naruto inquired, "What happened to them?" The monk got up and escorted Naruto to a plain door, explaining, "They gave in to temptation. Protect your heart and emotions, because only then will you succeed where innumerable others have failed." Naruto nodded as he entered the lengthy, dim hallway and said, "Thank you." The blonde shrugged and started to walk, seemingly going nowhere but getting closer and closer. When he heard irate voices to his right, he stopped walking. He turned to see a scene from his past, where he was running and being chased by irate villagers. A dark blade with miasma gushing from it suddenly materialized in front of the image. "Take me, and strike fear into those that have wronged you. Wield me and all will bow before you. Use me, and you shall be the greatest shinobi ever known," the blade said. This thought was so alluring that Naruto scowled. Last but not least, he shook his head and said, "No, my past may have been hard, but it is still mine. I wouldn't change a thing about it." A flash occurred as he finished speaking, and the scene vanished, leaving him facing a blank wall. Naruto turned and kept walking until he felt as though he was not making any progress. The noise was coming from the left this time. His eyes shifted to Hinata, who was standing there grinning and gesturing for him to follow. Naruto wanted to follow Hinata wherever she wanted to go, and he could literally feel his heart lurching. Recalling the monk's advice to protect his heart, he stopped himself just before he could take that step. He turned away and resumed walking after blinking, realizing that this was not real. Naruto was now standing in front of a different door after another flash. When he opened it, Katetsu was seated directly in front of him on a pedestal. As he approached the blade and gingerly raised the katana, Naruto muttered, "Too easy." His shadow leapt to the ground as he did, creating a shadow of his sword and swinging its blade at him. Quickly reacting, Naruto rolled away, blocking the second swing with his own blade. The match was too even, but the two pushed each other with everything they had as they traded blows. It took some time for Naruto to realize that he was once again allowing his emotions to dictate his behavior. He began to control his bloodlust, aggression, and rage, and eventually he was completely composed. He also realized that the shadow could have taken advantage of a number of weaknesses that Naruto had unintentionally left, and he quickly came to the conclusion that the shadow wasn't genuinely attempting to win. He scowled and made the risky decision to swing the blade, letting go of it as he did so. He saw the shadow vanish for a brief moment before Naruto stepped through and grabbed the blade as it began to re-form, slicing the shadow in two from head to toe. Another flash appeared as the shadow vanished, and Naruto discovered that another door was standing open for him. He opened it and discovered that he was once again in the main hall that he had entered upon entering the temple. The monk wrote, "And you survived, young pilgrim. I'm too stubborn to die, but I have to admit that it was a close thing." Naruto laughed. "Your advice really did help me." Reaching up to the idol, the monk removed a plain wooden sheath that contained the blade, saying, "I am glad that you heeded it enough to best your shadow." The monk nodded, adding, "Now then, here is your reward." Drawing the blade, Naruto remarked, "So this is Katetsu." The monk nodded and said, "Yes, this blade will be of good use to you." Naruto nodded and turned to leave, heading out to Jiraiya, who was sitting on a rock and going through some notes. "Thank you." "Good, you're back." Jiraiya smiled, "Which leaves us plenty of time to get to training you." Naruto said, "Sounds good. How long was I in there?" By shrugging, Jiraiya said, "A few hours." After that, the two began returning to the village, where Jiraiya decided it would be best to wait until tomorrow because it was already late. Jiraiya led Naruto into the backyard the following morning and led him directly to the hot spring. Now first I'm going to teach you the water walking technique. Jiraiya said as he began to walk on the water's surface, demonstrating his point. This is a more advanced version of the tree climbing exercise that Kurenai taught you. For this, instead of a steady flow of chakra, it needs to adjust to the surface of the water. Once you've mastered that, we will move on to the next part where we will start sparring on top of the water. This is the real mark of mastery since you need to manage to separate things at once. Naruto nodded and began to pump the chakra into his feet before stepping onto the steaming water and lowering himself to his knees, squirming from the intense heat. Jiraiya reprimanded Naruto, who complied, saying, "Not a bad start, but you're not there yet, get out and try again." Neither his subsequent attempt nor the one before it was any better. After hours of practice, Naruto was able to walk on top of the water without sinking. Naruto let out a groan. "Finally. Now that you've got that down, we're going to start multi-tasking." Jiraiya responded. "How?" inquired Naruto. "Well, you know the Kage Bushin Jutsu, right?" Naruto nodded. "Yeah." As he had Naruto create a clone and then created one himself, Jiraiya explained. "Well, there's a little known secret about it, it's the reason why it's a B-ranked kinjutsu." After walking far enough away to avoid detection, the two clones played rock, paper, scissors. Astonished, Naruto uttered, "I beat you." That's the secret. Kage Bushin are a literal copy of you, so they can give you the memories that they gained. But you have to be careful. The longer they are alive, the more information hits you, and if you release a ton of them after they've been around for a long time, you could fry your brain and be a vegetable for the rest of your life. Jiraiya cautioned. "A few for a long period of time, or a lot over a short are fine." Naruto nodded gravely. "Got it. Now then, here is what we are going to do. You already have quite excellent taijutsu skills, and kenjutsu skills, plus a variety of other skills that I'm sure you haven't shown yet. What we are going to be doing is this. I'm going to let you sign the Toad Summoning Scroll, just like you did before you. Once you sign it, you can summon toads to help you in combat." Confused, Naruto questioned, "What's so great about toads?" "Toads are amazing," Jiraiya exclaimed. "They have a natural affinity for water techniques, and some are even capable of breathing fire or spouting out an oil to make your fire techniques even more lethal. Some are capable of emitting deadly poisons against your enemies, and others are exceptionally skilled with weapons. They come in a variety of shapes and sizes, so they are useful in a variety of situations, and there are some that you can summon parts of them to help trap your foes." At all of this, Naruto blinked and had to give Jiraiya the benefit of the doubt. Naruto nodded and said, "All right, Arrow. Sennin, let's sign that scroll." With a smile, Jiraiya put the scroll down, opened it, and told Naruto that he needed to leave his fingerprints at the bottom and sign his name in his own blood. After finishing, Jiraiya demonstrated to him how to call them. "Now make sure you use as much chakra as you possibly can, even the kyubis if you have to," Jiraiya issued a warning. Naruto began the hand signs and poured all of his chakra into it, even using the kyubis, Kachiyoshi no Jutsu. He nodded and said, "Got it." Naruto, wearing a coat, smoking a pipe, and holding a sword in one hand, stood atop a huge red toad in a huge puff of smoke. He yelled, Jiraiya, why do you summon me?" As he became concerned about the blonde, Jiraiya clarified, "Sorry Gamabunta, but I didn't summon you." When Gamabunta noticed that someone was on top of his head, he grunted, "Who are you, y'all little shit?" As he jumped down to confront the toad, Naruto said, "I'm Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, and if I pulled you away from any important business, then I apologize. Sorry about summoning you like this." "Hey, this Gaki has some respect," he smiled. "You a new summoner?" "I am. This was my first time using the jutsu, and I didn't expect to be summoning the leader of the toads from the looks of it," Naruto responded. Gamabunta pondered as he took the blonde in. "You said Namikaze. You're Minato, kid? I suppose I can let you off with a warning, and make you my subordinate." Naruto nodded. "I am." Not a subordinate then. Minato was a good friend to the toads, so I'll make you my partner. If you're ever in a pinch, you let me know and I'll lend you a hand, long as you treat us with respect." Gamabunta replied. "But if you start summoning us like Jiraiya does, I will personally flatten you." "Got it." Naruto smiled and nodded. "I'll try not to summon you again, but I might summon some of your colleagues since I am still learning and would like to know the amount of chakra needed for the different toads." Gamabunta yelled as he vanished. "Very well. But this is the only time I will allow it. You have until sunset to get it down." With a sigh of relief, Jiraiya said, "Gaki, you are extremely lucky. Gamabunta is one toad you do not want to cross." Naruto questioned, "I bet. What did you do to piss him off?" I accidentally summoned his son in a woman's hot spring. Jiraiya murmured, it was an accident. You are a horrible human being. Naruto exclaimed. Anyways, what else are we going to be working on? For today, summoning only. Get it down right, no exceptions since we don't know when you might need to use it in an emergency. Tomorrow we'll cover anything else you might have to learn, Jiraiya responded. Naruto nodded and began to practice the day away, saying, got it. Naruto had successfully summoned a number of toads by the time the sun had set, noting the various chakra levels required for each one, making sure to get each one's name when it appeared, and treating them with deference. You've got a knack for this, Gaki. Jiraiya nodded as they concluded the day. Now let's eat, and then tomorrow we will work on some more areas for you. Jiraiya had Naruto complete a ton of warm-up exercises on the third day, including hundreds of push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, and several hundred laps around the village, until he decided he was ready to move on to the next part of the training. Jiraiya said, now make as many clones as you can. Naruto grinned. Hundreds of Narutos soon surrounded Jiraiya. Right. Now I have several exercises for you to split between them. First group I want working on fighting on water, I'll make a cage bushin to handle that, and they go one at a time so you can learn from their mistakes. The second group is going to be working on some new jutsus that I'm going to be teaching you. I'll mainly focus on wind and fire techniques, thought I might throw in another element here and there, that way you have more of a variety, though you are going to have a harder time learning how to use earth and water due to your wind and fire chakra. Jiraiya clarified. The third group is going to be reading several different scrolls, containing information on how to fight against various opponents. This is the group that I want the least amount of clones on since you learn too much at one time could destroy your brain. Finally you will be sparring against me on the ground here, that way I can see where you stand in various areas. Naruto nodded and signaled the clones to separate, with a quarter of them going off to the side to begin reading. You guys will dispel after every scroll you finish, that way I don't get overloaded, only one of you reading at a time. He paused as he looked at the next group, saying, you guys head for the spring and wait for Jiraiya's bushin, and remember, one at a time. He then turned to face the final group, saying, you guys make sure that you are out of the way of everyone else as you work on these jutsu. Make sure you learn them perfectly. The clones all yelled, yes boss, and left Jiraiya standing there with the original blonde. As he made 3 cage bushin and assigned each to a different group, Jiraiya laughed and said, I got to admit you have a ton of charka. Now then, let's see how you stack up. Naruto just laughed as they began to fight. As Hinata tried to use the standard Jiyuken, Heishi said, again. Although she had made progress, she wasn't performing as well as Neji. His oldest daughter was having a rough time, and if she didn't want the caged bird seal placed on her, the elders would do it against his wishes unless she defeated her first opponent in the finals. He observed Hinata's repeated unsuccessful attempts at the technique. Enough, Hinata. Take a break and we will continue again in 20 minutes, Heishi said. As she left, Hinata nodded and said, yes to Sama. As he arrived at the door, a branch member said, Heishi, Sama, you have a visitor. As Kushina entered and the branch member stepped aside, Heishi questioned, oh? Kushina sat down opposite the head of the Hyuga clan and grinned, saying, Heishi, good to see you again. Kushina. It has been some time. Heishi laughed. I had heard that you had returned to the village. I am happy that this is so. Kushina nodded and said, thanks. So how's Hinata's training going? Not all that well. She fails to grasp the Jiyuken style that we use, Heishi murmured. Kushina questioned, didn't Hinoka have that same problem? As Kushina said this, Hiashi's eyes brightened, and he nodded, recalling his late wife's actions to ensure that she would be able to use the Jiyuken. Yes. Hinata is a lot like her. Heishi replied, thank you Kushina, but I do not believe that you came here to help me with my dilemma. Smart as ever. Kushina laughed. I figured that now would be a good time to talk about Naruto and Hinata dating since they are almost at the point already. Heishi scowled as he considered this. The boy captured Hinata's heart, and Naruto had a significant impact on her. She gained confidence and was able to compete in the spars that the elders had been assigning her and Hanabi since they were placed on the same team. He was still a father, though, and he did have some reservations about the whole situation. However, he eventually came to the realization that he might be overly protective. Heishi said, I see no harm in them dating. Great, Kushina exclaimed, laughing, I can already hear the wedding bells. As she returned, Hinata inquired, wedding bells? What are you talking about, Kushina-san? Kushina grinned and said, oh nothing Hinata-chan, thanks for your time, Heishi. Of course. He waved goodbye to Kushina. Hinata, I have given some thought to your predicament with the house style of Jayuken, and thanks to Kushina, I have an idea of how to remedy the situation. How are you, too? Sama? Hinata inquired, and Heishi merely gestured for her to follow him before guiding her to a storage room, where he produced multiple scrolls and gave them to her. Your mother owned these. Her issue with the Jayuken was similar to yours. By defeating one of the top Hyuga shinobi in a 1-on-1 battle, she was able to demonstrate the value of the version she created. I will be unable to help you as I could never understand the techniques myself, Heishi explained. You will succeed if you study these scrolls and learn the techniques inside of them. 2. Sama, I get it. Hinata nodded as she left to read the scrolls and discover all that her mother had produced. I will try my hardest. Before the month was over, Shino read over the techniques his father wanted him to learn and made sure he understood them all. Shino was busy communicating with the new hive that his father had given him for reaching the finals, learning about them and making sure they worked well with the hive that he already had within him. With the hives buzzing in agreement, he said in his mind, I will master these techniques. Ichigo, you must practice, Rukia called out to her teammate, who was reclined on the roof. Ichigo answered, and I am right now. I will. You're simply lying there. No, Rukia yelled. Rukia scowled, and Ichigo answered, and working on my chakra flow. Are you serious? Given your formidable opponent in the upcoming round, it appears that you are being indolent, Rukia said. Ichigo said, I know he's strong, and so is yours. I'm training for that reason. Rukia shot back, Baka. Just leave him, Rukia. Renji murmured, if he doesn't want to train while our senseis are away, then that is his problem. Rukia sighed and returned to her ninjutsu practice, saying, fine. Inoichi encouraged his daughter to put in more effort, saying, come on Ino, you can do better than that. I'm not sure why you expect me to put in so much effort, Ino grumbled. Sasuke is going to ruin me in the next round. Ino, just because you're up against Sasuke in the first round doesn't mean you're going to lose. Inoichi responded, look at Naruto, he was dead last when he graduated and now he is considered the most likely to win every round. Really? Startled, Ino inquired. Yes, Inoichi retorted, now just imagine if you manage to do just as well, and if you train hard enough then you just might. He is the odds-on favorite, right next to that Gaara no Subaku kid. This made Ino scowl, and after realizing the value of her father's advice, she began to put in more effort in an attempt to defeat Sasuke in the opening round. Done. When Kankuro eventually stopped upgrading Crow, he laughed. We only have a few days left before the invasion, Tamari said. Good. Yes. Do you truly believe this is a good idea? I mean, Konoha is a strong village, and even with those Auto-Nin's help, there is a pretty good chance that we might all be killed, Kankuro inquired. It's Sama's decision. Tamari murmured, I don't like the odds of this, but with Gaara helping us we might just actually pull this off. Where is Gaara, by the way? Kankuro inquired. Since we left the Forest of Death, he has spent every night sitting on the roof. I believe he is eager for the upcoming rounds to begin, Tamari replied. Kankuro mumbled, more like bloodthirsty. As the sand in his gourd moved in anticipation, Gaara sat on the rooftop and gazed at the full moon. Gaara heard his demon whispering crazily, and he muttered, soon you will have all the blood you want. After much effort with the assistance of Guy and Lee, Neji finally finished the technique he had been working on, grinning. He had been watching a number of members of the main branch use this technique in practice. This young student of mine is very good, Guy yelled, you will definitely perform well in the upcoming round with this. As he left the circle he had formed, Neji nodded proudly and said, hi. It is my fate to succeed in this examination. In the meantime, Tenten had completed honing her skills with the new weapon her father had suggested she learn in case she ended up fighting with the Kirigakure girl or her teammate. It's known as a meteor hammer. Then, as she put the weapon away, Tenten posed the question. You're correct. Her father nodded and said, plus this should catch your teammate off guard if you have to fight him instead. It's a very powerful weapon, especially against a swordsman due to the unpredictable nature of the weapon. As Tenten continued her practice, she grinned and said, sounds good. Kakashi's gaze grinned at Sasuke, who had just discovered the Chidori technique's limit. Looks like you can manage 2 of them at the moment. Kakashi added, any more than that and you'll start drawing on the curse seal and then your chakra levels will start to decline. Sasuke nodded in agreement, but his mind was focused on defeating Naruto, the goal he had set for himself, before confronting and eliminating Itachi. As he completed the final jutsu he would need to practice in order to have a chance against Gaara no Subaku in the first round, Omoi nodded. Finished? As she watched him leave the practice field, Samui inquired. I am. Omoi replied, I should be able to handle Gaara no Subaku, unless he manages to have developed some new long-range technique, then I might end up dead or... Samui patted her teammate's shoulders and sighed, saying, enough. There was no point in worrying about the game at this point. Now get some rest, the matches are in 2 days. Omoi simply nodded. Just do what you can and make sure not to get caught by his sand. Omoi smiled and nodded as he proceeded to the hotel where they were staying. Right. All right, Naruto. As they concluded their training for the day, Jiraiya grinned and said, we've done everything we can. Tomorrow are the matches, and you know that you've got to be at your best. I will be. Naruto replied, I've already picked up lots of new tricks for this. Jiraiya chuckled and said, that's my gaki. I'll be close in case things get messy and Orochimaru tries something. Since he chose to mark Sasuke, the entire village is on high alert. Naruto shuddered and said, still creepy. Jiraiya nodded and said, there are no arguments here. Go eat and then go to bed. Tomorrow is going to be a big day for you. Jiraiya glared at the blonde as she ran into the house, but Naruto smiled and shook his head, hoping that the blonde would perform well enough in tomorrow's matches and that his growing suspicion that the village was in danger was unfounded. Right arrow. Sennin. After completing some last-minute preparations, Naruto got up early and met up with his team as they made their way to the arena. Naruto questioned, you guys ready? As ready as we can be. Hinata gave a nod. I know that I worked really hard this past month. Shino agreed, saying, the same. Naruto sighed, arrow. Sennin worked me to the bone. Tell me about it. This made Hinata start to laugh, and Shino gave Naruto a perplexed look. He questioned, who is this person? Both Hinata and Shino nodded in response to Naruto's statement, Jiraiya the Sannin. He was my dad's teacher, and you know that orange book Kakashi. Sensei is always reading. Well, he wrote them and they are complete smut. As Shino nodded his understanding of why he had given the man his title, Hinata now flushed. Kurenai was already waiting for them when they arrived at the arena. As they got closer, she grinned and said, good luck you three. Hinata nodded, thanks Kurenai. Sensei. Naruto laughed and said, but we don't need luck, we've got talent. Don't get arrogant now Naruto. Kurenai chuckled, but I'll make sure that Anko keeps her bet that you will make it to the finals Naruto. Naruto laughed and the three of them went through separate hallways to reach the participant area, where they saw everyone but Sasuke. Thanks Kurenai. Sensei. Shino inquired, where's Sasuke? Neji calmly replied, he hasn't arrived yet. Ino said, I kind of hope he doesn't, I'd rather not fight him. Ichigo laughed and said, then you're fighting me or Blondie. Ino sighed, also rather not have that happen. Tenten inquired, so what happens if he doesn't show? He gets disqualified. Rukia responded, unless your village decides to play favorites and they might push back his match to give him time to arrive. Naruto sighed as he sat down and made the decision to wait until the start time, so no matter what you're facing him. Sarutobi sat up in the cage booth and watched the crowd, aware that multiple Anbu agents were present in case Orochimaru pulled a prank. He noticed the cage and his 2 bodyguards approaching when he looked up. When the man in the robes came closer, Sarutobi grinned and said, Cage, Sama. It is good to see you again, he said, nodding as he sat down. Hokage, Sama. As 2 more groups came closer, Sarutobi nodded and said, the same to you, and it appears our other cages are arriving. There were 2 of them. A dark-skinned man with 2 bodyguards and a woman with 3. Hokage. Sama, Cage. Sama. The lady laughed. I'm Mei Terumi, the Godem Mizukage. These are my bodyguards, Ao, Chojuro, and Zabuza. At this, all 3 cages blinked and turned to face the former Nuke Nin, who merely gave them a nod. The cage said, I thought that he was a wanted Nin. As the 3 nodded and positioned themselves behind the Mizukage, Mei clarified, not anymore. Now that the Yondaime has been removed, Zabuza has been allowed to return and reinstated into active duty as one of our Kiri no Shinobigatana Shichinen Shu, 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. Sarutobi nodded and said, and Raikage. Sama, it is a pleasure to see you again. Same. He smiled. The name is A, and these are my bodyguards Darui and C. As they sat down, the Kazakage nodded to them and said, a pleasure Raikage, Sama. We have quite the selection this year. Sarutobi stated, I observed all of them during the preliminaries and must say that it will be a tough decision on how would be the best candidates. I can believe it. I replied, I read the report that my team sent back to my brother, their sensei. Lots of talent, including that Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze brat. I remember his father pretty well, and if he's anything like him then this could prove to be an interesting few hours. Is that so? Mei responded, Zabuza.san here has spoken highly of him as well. After getting my ass kicked by him I think I'm allowed to. Zabuza chuckled, he's up first right. Sarutobi grinned as he got up to speak about the significance of the test and the pride these genin should feel for doing so well. That he is. Let me give the speech and I will let their actions determine who is the better. Gecko said, all right. Our first match is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze versus Ichigo Kurosaki. The two competitors jumped down and faced one another, grinning, shaking hands before moving a few paces apart and facing one another. Keep an eye on them. Chojuro heard Zabuza say. You've seen Ichigo in action and sparred against him several times, but that Naruto has some great talent as well. Could easily be a member of our little group. Ichigo nodded and said, I see you got a new sword. As he moved into his stance, Naruto answered, I didn't want to disappoint. I don't intend to hold back, so don't hold back if you want to live. Gecko yelled, begin, and the two hit. To the onlookers, Naruto appeared to vanish and then reappear behind Ichigo with his sword drawn as he flashed forward and drew it. Since his blade was already out of the wrappings and had stopped Naruto's quick cuts, Ichigo just grinned. Ichigo said, not going to be so easy, I can see your blade's movement. He turned to face Naruto and added, so don't go easy either. Naruto grinned as he struck once more, this time launching a flurry of slashes that Ichigo attempted to block. Ichigo discovered that although Naruto was a faster swordsman, he was not as strong as him, so he took advantage of this by using strong blows to break up Naruto's preferred quick combos, but Naruto recovered quickly enough to recover from the disruptions. After a few minutes of back and forth, Naruto stepped back and smirked while slashing his blade at the ground. Naruto roared, Hidden Mitsurugi.Ryu Doryasen, and hurled earth chunks at Ichigo, who merely grinned and struck back. As he struck back, Ichigo yelled, Getsuga Tensho. The blonde blinked and rolled to the side to avoid the brunt of the blow. Hope you aren't finished yet. Getsuga Tensho, Ichigo yelled. Ichigo sent blast after blast at the blonde, who quickly realized he would need to come up with a cunning plan to close the distance, and Naruto blinked in surprise as he leapt away once more and fled. Naruto saw another wave coming straight at him as he skidded to a stop and decided that this was his chance to break through. As Naruto charged forward, he started to channel chakra into his blade, which Jiraiya had advised him to do in such a circumstance. K's no kata, wind cutter, Naruto smiled as he cut, letting his wind enhanced blow slip off the blade and cut through Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho, allowing him to get close and strike again. Hidden Mitsurugi.Ryu Ryukansen Arashi, Dragon Coiling Flash Storm. Naruto swung in, slamming into Ichigo before he could raise Zangetsu to block it, then slashed across his shoulder to his side, leaving him bleeding on the ground. Gecko yelled, Winner Naruto, knowing that Ichigo would probably perish if he made any other attempt. As the medics rushed over, Naruto grinned and assisted in applying pressure to the wound to halt the blood flow. Good match. Yeah, but you are a way better swordsman. I see why Zabuza respects you so much. Ichigo was coughing. As the medics removed him, Naruto said, we can talk more later. He then left the arena floor. Told you. Zabuza laughed. That blonde could have killed him if he had aimed his attack a little more to the left. Chojuro whistled, I've never even heard of a style like that, no kidding. His mentor is very secretive. Sarutobi responded, it appears taught the next match is Sasuke Uchiha versus Ino Yamanaka. I nodded and said, this should be interesting. At that moment, Sasuke and Kakashi appeared in a whirl of leaves. The boy appeared somewhat worn out but still eager to go. Kakashi smiled and said, I hope we aren't late. Gecko nodded and declared that the next match was about to start. Just in time actually. Knowing that this could go badly, but also knowing that she wouldn't give up easily, Ino walked down and faced Sasuke. In order to try to get a chance to use her technique against Sasuke and force him to forfeit, Ino threw down a smoke bomb as soon as the match started. When Sasuke realized that one of his fangirls was actually going to fight against him, he grinned and began to move away from the smoke, attempting to predict her location with his Sharingan. After a few moments, he finally noticed the movement and flashed through the hand signals with a sly smile. Kaden. Ha Senka no Jutsu, Phoenix Sage Fire Technique. Sasuke yelled as he directed the flurry of fireballs in Ino's general direction. He grinned when he noticed that the girl began to jump to avoid the flames and approach him, where he charged in with the intention of eliminating her with her weakness, Taijutsu. He launched a flurry of attacks as he closed in, but to his surprise, Ino was able to avoid most of his moves. Although she was unable to counterattack, Sasuke was unable to land a solid blow. Ino attempted to kick Sasuke's side while twisting to the side of one of his attacks, but the Uchiha just smiled as he grabbed her leg and threw her while making more hand signals. Sasuke roared, "Kaden! Ga Kakia, no Jutsu," as he hurled the enormous ball of fire in Ino's direction. Ino saw it and quickly replaced it with a log to prevent the incinerating blast. While hiding in the little area of forest, Ino tried to think of a strategy but knew she couldn't defeat Sasuke in a straight fight unless he remained motionless for a while. After deciding to take a chance, she began using her family's method and directed her thoughts towards Sasuke, who smirked and leapt away, and Ino let out a mental scream upon realizing she had been duped. Calmly approaching her location, Sasuke lifted her and hurled her against the wall. He pulled out a kunai and was about to hurl it at the girl when Gekko caught hold of his arm. He glared at the boy for what he was going to do and declared, "Sasuke is the winner." Ino was quickly taken to the medical area by the medics and Sasuke left. "Yes, perfectly ruthless. He is growing nicely," Orochimaru said, laughing at the way the game had gone. "That was quite dishonorable," C said quietly. He had her beat, there was no need to take that any further. "Agreed." A smiled. "That Uchiha is in need of an attitude adjustment, or to be taken down a few pegs." "Well, that should happen during his next match." Zabuza laughed. "Naruto will wipe the floor with him." Gekko exclaimed, "The next match is Shino Aburame vs Kankuro." Kankuro yelled, "I forfeit," to the proctor below. Orochimaru grinned that the genin had remembered the plan, and Gekko scowled before calling for Hinata and Temari. Temari was confident that she could fight convincingly and still be prepared for the invasion, but she wasn't sure if she would defeat Hinata when the two girls faced off. Temari was concerned because she didn't want to sustain too much damage from the fight and be rendered useless during the invasion, but the girl had changed over the course of the month, not physically but she appeared stronger and more determined than before. As soon as Temari opened her fan and unleashed a blast of wind at Hinata, Gekko yelled, "Begin!" Hinata let the wind carry her and used chakra to land on the wall. She then began running along it until she leapt up and closed in on Temari, launching a flurry of smoke bombs to divert Temari's attention and keep her guessing her source. Temari yelled, "Not going to work," as she blew the smoke away with a gale, only to discover that Hinata had vanished from view. "Hake Sanya, Ni Sha, 8 trigrams 30, 2 palms." Hinata uttered the words behind her as she struck, 2 palms, 4 palms, 8 palms, 16 palms, 30.2 palms. Temari winced in agony as each blow sent her farther away, and on the final set, she was sent flying as Hinata continued to strike once more and press the advantage, leaning around Temari's closed dot and swung fan in the hopes of crushing her with its weight. Temari was obviously defeated when Hinata closed all of her Tenketsu points and nodded. Gekko yelled, "Winner Hinata," as the girl nodded and returned to her teammates. Anko looked at Asuma and laughed, saying, "Told you, pay up." Asuma sighed as he handed her several hundred ryo, saying, "Fine fine." Kakashi said, "You realize that it was a sucker's bet?" Anko questioned, "Like yours is any better?" Kakashi countered, "I bet that Naruto would win." "Maybe, but you think that Sasuke will last 5 minutes against him is ridiculous." Kurenai replied, "We all know that Naruto will destroy him under 2 minutes. Hence the bet." Kakashi laughed. "I at least know that my student is going to lose in this, he just got lucky enough to make it to the second round." Asuma questioned, "But you didn't tell him this, did you?" Kakashi said, "No, be bad for his confidence. I wouldn't be worried about that." Anko chuckled. "I'd be more worried about his ego." Asuma lit a cigarette and laughed, saying, "Too true. Now let's see how this plays out." Gaara and Omoi had both entered the arena, and as the boy sucked on his lollipop, Gaara was simply looking at Omoi calmly. Gaara's sand rushed out of the gourd and headed directly for Omoi, who stepped back and made a number of hand signals. "Begin," Gekko yelled as he retreated. As he sent a wave of electricity in Gaara's direction, Omoi yelled, "Raiden! Jabashi! Electromagnetic murder!" Gaara only responded by sending waves of sand to ground the lightning before it even approached him. As he began to push his sand into the ground to produce more of it, Gaara said, "Pathetic." Omoi exclaimed, "Okay. Maybe I should try this. Raiden, Byakurai, pale lightning," as he directed a concentrated lightning bolt at Gaara, who raised his sand barrier. He was startled when the bolt pierced it, then struck his sand armor before coming to a halt, breaking some of it but not seriously harming him. "Die. Seika Zatai Ka Geki. Shukaku no Hoko, ultimately hard absolute attack. Spear of Shukaku." Gaara hissed. The sand he had been throwing into the ground rose up and took the shape of a claw. Like halberd. Gaara threw the spear with a maniacal smile, and Omoi blinked before jumping up onto the wall and away from the weapon as it pierced the wall beneath him. As he began practicing the hand signs for his final jutsu, the one he had intended to save for the final, Omoi muttered, "That could have killed me, or perhaps paralyzed me and left me vulnerable to him." He now understood that he would have to use it immediately if he wanted to have any chance. Omoi yelled, "Raiden! Reika-ha, Thunder Roar Seer," as he formed a ball of lightning in his hand and threw it in Gaara's direction. It exploded as it grew and turned into a huge lightning blast that covered Gaara and a portion of the arena. When the explosion was over and everyone could see again, they noticed that Gaara was covered in a sphere of sand, which was now disappearing, and the Sanagakure Genin was unharmed. Omoi yelled, "I forfeit," to the proctor, who nodded and proclaimed Gaara the victor. According to Sarutobi, most impressive. No kidding. Kid took a Reika-ha without even blinking. I murmured, and that ends my village's part in these exams. It was an impressive display though. He clearly researched his opponent and had no way of knowing that Gaara would be capable of turning bedrock into sand. Mei continued. Sarutobi looked at the man and said, "In the end your child has done quite well, Kazekage, Sama. Indeed. He has become quite the shinobi." He nodded while thinking, what is that damn Jinchuruki doing? He was supposed to transform and start rampaging. Neji Hyuga vs Rukia Kuchiki is the next match, Gecko said. Neji smirked slightly as he readied himself to quickly defeat his opponent and save his strength for the actual opponents later on as the two hurried into the arena and faced one another. Rukia was the first to strike when the game began. Rukia drew her sword, formed a circle beneath them both, and then stepped out, saying, "Some no mai, Tsukishiro." However, Neji knew this trick and struck, moving outside the circle to get close to Rukia, close her tenketsu points, and prevent her from posing a threat to him. As he moved to make the first strike, Rukia smirked and turned, slicing at his back and dodging his blow with simple grace. Neji grinned in response and said nothing. Neji spun in a circle and produced a sphere of charka that repelled Rukia's attack and sent her skidding back at the unexpected burst of Haki Shikaden, 8 trigrams palms revolving heaven. Rukia began noting how he had used that technique and came up with the idea, "But I won't be defeated that easily." She nodded, saying, "Impressive." Neji retorted icily, "You have no chance of winning. It is my destiny to defeat you." Destiny? Rukia laughed. "There is no such thing. Life is what you make of it." "Is that so?" asked Neji. "It is. I may be from a royal family, but I was adopted into it. I lived on the streets with Renji for years, growing up an orphan and doing what I had to survive. I was found by a member of the Kuchiki family and they saw my potential and took me in and made sure that Renji had a better life as well. Life is what you will make of it, and if you hide behind words like destiny then you are nothing but a coward." Rukia replied with a calm voice, "To prove it, I will beat you without having to use the second technique." As he got ready to kill her, Neji retorted, "Your conceit will be your downfall." Rukia smirked and made a few hand gestures before saying, "No, but yours will be. Raiden. Rikuja Ka Ra. 6 rods prison of light." Rukia began her next set of hand signs. Kaden. Sa Katsui, blue fire crashed down. As she exclaimed as 6 bars of light burst forth and pierced through Neji, pinning him in place. The match ended when Rukia unleashed a burst of blue fire that struck Neji, sending him flying and leaving him with crippling burns. As the medical staff rushed onto the field, Gecko yelled, "Winner Rukia." Neji-san, let this teach you a lesson. Rukia said, "Nothing is ever set in stone," and turned to leave. This is the time for our 10-minute intermission. As everyone stood and began talking about the different matches, Gecko made the announcement. Mei nodded and said, "Most impressive this year." Sarutobi nodded, agreed. "But the matches aren't finished yet. I'm excited to see what they can accomplish." Gecko yelled as the two entered the arena, facing each other with an obvious air of animosity. The next match is Naruto Uzumaki vs Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke smiled and said, "Time to die dope." Naruto assumed a fighting stance and said, "Bring it on, weakling." "Start!" Gecko shouted as he moved back and watched as Naruto and Sasuke clashed in pure taijutsu. Sasuke had gotten much faster and was now a much stronger opponent, but Naruto had him beat in terms of speed and general ability. He blocked a punch and moved into the gap, unleashing an elbow blow that he reinforced by using his palm to smash into his fist, making the blow more devastating as it cracked 2 of Sasuke's ribs, sending the Uchiha back in pain. Naruto didn't let up though and continued to move through the gaps that were created and unleashed various blows on the Uchiha, from karate punches that lifted him off of the ground, to Muay Thai knee and elbow blows that were so devastating that it left Sasuke reeling. By the time Naruto had stopped, he looked at the bloody and bruised Sasuke, who could barely stand, and looked at the proctor to call the match. Just before Gekko could, though, Naruto heard the sound of chirping birds and saw Sasuke charging at him with his fist covered in lightning as he prepared to stab his fist through Naruto. Chidori. With a roar, Sasuke launched the attack at Naruto, who responded by lowering himself and turning, stealing Sasuke's back while displaying his own hand signs. As his fist wrapped in a high-pressure sphere of wind that was about as fast as an F3 tornado, Naruto said, "Futon. Tatsumaki no Ken, tornado fist." He then punched Sasuke in the back, watching him fly across the arena and into the wall, where he smashed into it with enough force to knock him out. "Naruto is the winner," Gekko yelled, gesturing for the medics. Naruto simply nodded and proceeded back to the competitor's box, where Shino and Hinata would be up next. "Most impressive," Mei replied. "It's been a long time since I've seen anyone deal a taijutsu beatdown like that." "No kidding," I replied. "That was some seamless work there." As he watched the boy he loved like a grandson succeed, Sarutobi grinned and said, "Yes, he worked very hard on his taijutsu techniques." Uncertain of how this would unfold, Hinata and Shino walked away from one another after shaking hands as they entered the arena. When Gekko began the match, Shino knew he would have to end it quickly, so he let his hives loose. As Shino used his technique, Hijutsu, Mashidama, secret technique, insect sphere, he said, "Pardon me, Hinata, but I will defeat you right here and now." The insects then targeted Hinata, who anticipated their approach and readied her final line of defense. "You're not the only one with new techniques, Shino," Hinata replied. "Shugohaki Rokuja, Yan Sha, protection of the 8 trigrams 64 palms." This standoff lasted for several minutes before Shino realized that he wouldn't be able to defeat Hinata in this manner because she could maintain this technique for an unknown amount of time. Eventually, Shino realized that this was going to be his defeat and remembered his hives. Hinata then began moving her arms to create a powerful defensive shield that began cutting through Shino's insects as they got close to her, even when they tried for her blind spot but couldn't get through and were sliced. "I acknowledge my failure. It looks like I am the first member of our team to be eliminated," Shino said, bowing his head to his teammate. "Your defense is far too superior to my offensive capabilities." Gekko made the announcement, and as they left, Hinata said, "I'm sorry, Shino, but I can't afford to lose." "Interesting battle," the Kazekage said. "I hadn't realized that the Hyuga had developed such techniques. Some are more specialized than others," Sarutobi responded, "but now your son gets a pass while the next match starts." As the next two fighters entered, the Kazekage nodded and stared. Indeed. Tenten scowled at Rukia, who was staring at Tenten intently while holding her katana. Rukia versus Tenten is the upcoming match. Start. Tenten grinned as she leapt back and unsealed her meteor hammers, spinning the metal heads around as Rukia drew her blade but refrained from using her opening move. Gekko yelled as he stepped aside. Tenten threw one of the heads and grinned as Rukia deflected it, but she didn't see Tenten pull the chain to make it spin back and encircle her blade. "Let's see what you can do," Rukia said. Impressive. Despite the blade being trapped, she was able to hold onto it. As she got ready to toss the other one, Tenten calmly responded, "I don't intend to lose here." Rukia responded, "Neither do I." She directed her chakra into the blade and saw as ice began to form on the chain as she pulled, breaking the frozen links and negating the weapon's utility. "All right. Then, we do it this way," Tenten said, discarding the weapon and snatching up the two scrolls. "Sa Sharia." Rukia turned the blade so that it faced the ground and tapped it 4 times in a half circle before speaking, but she just grinned as the storm of weapons was released. As she gathered the attack to the point of her blade and thrust it forward, causing an avalanche of freezing air to rise up and block the weapons aimed at her, Rukia said, "Tasugi no Mai. Hakuren. Next dance. White Ripple." She then smashed into Tenten, trapping her in ice. Rukia is the winner. Rukia nodded and left as a few shinobi descended to help break the ice, and Gekko yelled when he saw that Tenten was done. C whistled, "Incredible." "Yes, Rukia is one of our most promising shinobi," Mei replied. "Her brother is a very determined man and works her hard, but he is one of her instructors." "One of them?" Sarutobi inquired. "Yes." Zabuza nodded and said, "That team has 2. They were supposed to be here by now, but they were called away for a mission." "Besides your favorite blonde is up," Mei said calmly. "Something must have come up." As Naruto and Hinata walked into the arena and grinned at one another, Zabuza laughed and said, "This should be interesting." "Hey Hinata. Chan, does the winner get to eat tonight?" Naruto inquired. As Gecko began the match and Naruto began using hand signs, Hinata laughed and said, "Sure." Doden. Swamp of the Underworld's Yomi Numa. When Hinata realized what was happening and jumped up to try to avoid the worst of it, he realized that was what Naruto wanted and smirked. Naruto shouted as he slammed his hands on the ground and created the muck underneath Hinata. "Have a nice dream." Naruto called to her as he fired, sending a barrage of chakra at Hinata, who created her Shugohaki Rokuja, Yan Sha, to defend herself, cutting the chakra before it could hit her but letting the blasts push her further and further back from the swamp. When she landed, she smirked as Naruto holstered his guns and leapt up onto the wall, heading for Hinata, who did the same thing. The pair met in the middle and began a taijutsu battle that Naruto had to be extremely cautious of, since all Hinata had to do was make a few good hits and he would be cut off from his chakra. Naruto managed to avoid the blows, dodging around them with precision as he struck in turn trying to hit Hinata, but she knew Naruto too well and managed to get past his attacks as well. The pair looked like they were locked in an intricate dance as they dodged each other's blows by the smallest of margins and tried to counterattack only for the other to dodge them. Finally Naruto struck with his elbow, letting Hinata move into the gap and strike at him several times. "Got you." Naruto grinned and seized her arms, holding them down while sweeping her legs out from under her. When she dropped, he raised a knee, halting it just short of her face. "This is checkmate." "Yes." Hinata sighed, knowing that if they had gone on fighting, Naruto would have dazed her with a knee strike and then used a barrage of taijutsu to end the battle. Although he may have loved her, they were enemies in this case. "Naruto is the winner." As Hinata and Naruto left the arena, Gecko yelled. Hanabi just looked at her older sister, amazed that the girl she had always beaten had performed so well, while Heishi nodded in approval at his daughter's performance, confident that this would satisfy the elders for the time being. Soon after, Rukia and Gaara entered the arena, with Rukia striking first with a ninjutsu attack. Rikuja ka ra, Raiden. As the bars of light held Gaara in place, Rukia cried out, "I only have enough chakra for one last attack." Hakuren Tsugi no Mai. Rukia unleashed the avalanche of ice on Gaara, who only managed to block the incoming wave with a huge sand barrier. As the ice began to accumulate, more and more sand was added to the barrier, creating a huge ice wall where it and the sand had previously met. In an attempt to get some blood from this fight before facing Naruto and satisfying his mother's hunger, Gaara took the sand and made a wave of it, saying, "Die." Rukia's eyes widened as she saw the sand approaching and swiftly removed several kunai wrapped in explosive tags, throwing them towards the sand and detonating them, buying her a few seconds to escape the wave while trying to figure out how to finish this fight, but in the end, she saw that there was nothing she could do to defeat Gaara because her strongest technique had been stopped so easily. "I give up." Before the sand could grab her, Rukia cried out, and Gecko sprang into action, grabbing her and pushing her aside as Gaara gave him a homicidal glance. It's Gaara who wins. And now the finals, Naruto Uzumaki vs Subaku no Gaara. Gecko yelled, allowing Rukia to return to the spectator area as Naruto descended and confronted Gaara. Start. Sending a wave of sand in the direction of the blonde who had begun his own hand signs, Gaara simply smiled. Kamikaze. Divine Wind, Futon. Naruto shouted as he unleashed the wind that created several small tornadoes on the ground, drawing in the sand as Naruto flashed through more hand signs for his next technique. Kaden. Habashiri, Running Fire. Then, Naruto released a jet of fire that he sent into each tornado, creating spinning pillars of fire that turned the sand inside each of them to glass, lowering Gaara's sand count by a significant amount. Gaara blinked as his sand shield shielded him from the worst of it, but not from what Naruto had in store for him next. After taking off at speeds that were faster than most shinobi, he reappeared behind Gaara and swung his blade, watching as it managed to get past the sand shield and slashed away at the sand armor Gaara was wearing, shocking the Jinchuriki that Naruto had taken his back. The blonde was moving around so much that he was finding various gaps with ease and chipping away at Gaara's armor until he was forced to stop when Gaara had apparently decided to give up on defense and simply created a massive wave of sand. Naruto flashed more hand signals and swore as he saw the enormous wave, saying, "Well shit. Thanks for this arrow. Senin. Futon. Atsugai, damage from pressure." When Naruto created a clone and had it turn into a scythe, he fired a condensed sphere of wind that struck with such force that it created a massive gap in the wave of sand, allowing him to enter Gaara's zone. He spun the weapon and used it to chip away at his armor while hitting him with both ends of the weapon, leaving Gaara unsure of how to respond to such an attack. Eventually, he managed to find the opening he was looking for and slashed down with enough force that it cut through the sand armor and bit into Gaara's flesh, causing his sand to suddenly converge on him with rage. Naruto blinked as he let the clone stop being a scythe and threw him into the air where he avoided the worst of the sand, but the clone was trapped. Naruto landed on the arena wall and stared at Gaara, who had a hand on the wound, looking at him in complete bewildered. "This is blood. My heart," he yelled in utter terror and bewilderment, and his sand began to encircle him, forming a sphere of sand that he was locking himself inside while he did something. Naruto scowled and summoned multiple Kage Bunshin to attack the sphere in order to discover what it was capable of, and as they all charged forward, spikes emerged from the sphere, shooting each clone to death. Naruto hissed in his head, "Damn, that hurt. You just felt yourself get stabbed 10 times through the chest simultaneously. Kyuubi dead. Panned. Odds are that he's buying time to turn into his full Biju mode, so what we are going to need to do is somehow pierce that barrier of his." "Make use of that?" Naruto inquired. Kyuubi nodded and said, "It's our best bet." Just dropping to the ground, Naruto pulled out his weapons and began directing his and Kyuubi's chakra into them. The synchronization is finished. 0.02% noise. Response in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Kitsune Cannon. The blast struck the sphere with a loud detonation, and when the smoke cleared, Gaara stood there with his right arm and right side of his face changed into Shikaku. Naruto roared as he finished pouring the 2 chakras into the guns and then pulled the trigger, creating a massive blast of energy equivalent to a weak Bijudama. Sarutobi said, "What on earth?" as the cage suddenly grabbed him and put a kunai against his back. He nodded to his guards and leapt to the roof of the cage box, with Mei immediately behind him. He climbed onto the roof just as his 2 bodyguards turned into 4 nin, creating a barrier to keep people out and a second one to shield them from attacks from within. "It's so good to see you again, Sarutobi. Sensei." Orochimaru chuckled, "But it's a shame I couldn't get you alone." Explosions could be heard outside the barrier, signaling the start of the invasion of Konohagakure no Sato. Quick, targeted attacks on the village's walls and among the onlookers marked the start of the assault. While their respective bodyguards stood outside the barrier, attempting to find a way inside, the 3 cages on top of the cage booth faced Orochimaru. "Don't worry about us," Mei replied, "help the village, they're going to need it." "But," started Chojuro. Zabuza grabbed the younger one's shoulder and said, "Now let's go. We've got work to do, don't bother arguing with her." C said, "Raikage." "Sama?" As his 2 bodyguards nodded and departed with the 3 Kiri guards, it responded, "Go on. Consider this our apology for the Hyuga incident." As he pushed Sarutobi toward the other cages, Orochimaru questioned, "So confident are we?" "Well, no matter. This just means that I get to kill 4 of the 5 cages." "So you did kill the Yondaime Kazekage?" Sarutobi sighed, "You have fallen far, my student." Then Orochimaru laughed and got ready to fight them, saying, "No further than necessary." Before giant snakes began attacking, the shinobi were somewhat prepared because they had been warned on the walls that Orochimaru might be up to something. A Chunin roared, "Hold them back," and leapt away from the enormous snake, slamming a kunai into the side of its face. "We need to hold the walls," he said. Jiraiya yelled from above the snake, "Kachiyose! Yatai Kuzushi no Jutsu! Summoning technique! Food card destroyer technique!" before he called forth a gigantic toad and allowed it to slam the snake. The snakes were now focusing on the threat that had killed one of their own, Jiraiya noted as she surveyed the area. Jiraiya nodded and said, "Let him have it, Gamahiro." Gamahiro nodded, pulled out the 2 swords on his back, and cut off the heads of 2 snakes, of course. Kakashi and the other Jonin were busy fending off the Auto Jonin, who had disguised themselves as Anbu, in the Chunin exam arena. While directing a kunai into the rear of one that was aimed at Anko, who was battling her own enemy, Kakashi had just completed blocking one's attacks. Asuma finished cutting one's throat open with his trench knives and said, "They're persistent." After finishing a genjutsu trap with another pair and sending kunai knives into their heads, Kurenai nodded and moved back to back with Anko, who had just finished sending snakes into her opponent. "Can't disagree there." As he observed the remaining enemy nin being dealt with by other shinobi, Kakashi said, "I'm more concerned about the rest of the village." With a spinning kick to another adversary, Guy yelled, "And it seems our young students have taken to dealing with these foes as well. Don't worry, my young rival. There are plenty of other shinobi out in the village that will deal with these most unyouthful foes." "What?" cried Kurenai, Asuma, and Kakashi. The different genin had responded to the threat with all due diligence, as Guy had stated. With Naruto pursuing him, Gaara had run away, and Temari and Kankuro had started attacking the village as directed. Shino quickly cornered Kankuro, encircling the Sanagakure nin with his insects. I had a feeling that there was something afoot. Why, you might ask? This is because you, who fought so hard in the preliminaries, suddenly forfeiting before our fight. It is safe to assume that you prepared several traps within that puppet you use. Shino continued to stare at the shinobi. As he untangled Crow, Kankuro laughed and said, "So you're a smart one. Well, let's see what you got." Then, as he had Crow begin attacking Shino, who had his insects swarm the puppet, consuming the chakra and moving in the direction of Kankuro's hiding spot, Kankuro dropped a smoke bomb and fled. After realizing this was a bad idea, Kankuro severed the chakra strings, causing Crow to go limp while he moved. He then reactivated some of the chakra and had them attack Shino. The first was an arm that shot a poison canister in Shino's direction, but he was able to jump up a building and escape the worst of it. Then, as his insects ate the chakra, Shino rolled to the side and avoided the poison blade that had emerged from Crow's head and attempted to stab him. This went on for a while until Kankuro screamed as the insects attacked him, and Shino grinned. Kankuro rolled on the ground and screamed, "How?" as he attempted to squash the bugs. Simple. I had one hive dealing with your puppet while my second hive were out searching for you. Once they located you, I had my hive swarm you. Shino responded, "You were finished." "Damn you!" exclaimed Kankuro. Shino simply turned and began to walk away, leaving his bugs to handle Kankuro while he offered assistance where he could. Tamari, on the other hand, was less than thrilled with her first opponent after being caught by the lazy genius himself. "Of the hundreds of shinobi that I could have gone up against, I get the lazy bastard." Tamari was grumbling. The response from Shikamaru was, "Pretend to fight. This isn't exactly what I was looking to do today." Tamari yelled, "Not a chance," as she swung her fan and blasted Shikamaru with a tremendous gust of wind. As he landed against a building and flashed through the well-known hand signals, the shinobi with the pineapple hair complained. "Kageme no Jutsu," Shikamaru said, using the building's shadows to lengthen his shadow and bounce it around. After a short while, he caught Tamari from behind and imprisoned her. After he forced her to throw her fan as far as she could, he removed the handcuffs and had them locked up to a building. Tamari complained, You bastard. You could at least continue to fight." Shikamaru sat down and kept her imprisoned for as long as he could, responding, "That'd be too troublesome." Shinobi from different clans defeated one another in a series of battles that raged throughout the village. Kushina was moving among the enemy in the streets, slaying different opponents with her flashing katana. Before she knew it, Baki was standing in front of her, grinning. "I'd heard that the aka no Shi had returned to Konoha, and now I get the glory of killing her." Baki shrieked when he struck Kei's no Yeba, Blade of Wind. When Baki's out was cancelled by her own slash of wind, Kushina simply grinned as her blade rose and a distortion materialized in front of it. "Don't get arrogant now. I've faced far deadlier opponents." Kushina laughed as she raised her blade. "And you aren't the only one who can make a Kei's no Yeba. I just learned how to make it on objects." As they clashed once more, Baki grinned in return. This time, he made a second Kazi no Yeba and swung both of them at Kushina, who was faster than him and managed to block the blows, though she was being pushed back a little. This continued for a few moments before Kushina jumped back and got ready to end the battle. Kushina yelled, "Aku.Ryu Akuma no Odori, Dance of the Demon," as she charged at Baki, who swung both of his Kazi no Yeba at her. Baki was startled when she slipped past them and struck, spinning behind him and smashing his left side with the katana's hilt and then the back of his neck with the blade's back. He was left bleeding and barely conscious after being struck by an elbow to the other side and then quickly slashed across the front. Baki gurgled, Incredible." After giving him a quick glance, Kushina put her blade away and began to walk away. As she moved to assist in stopping the invasion, Kushina said, "You'll survive. You'll have some nasty-looking scars, but you will live." The different genin were cooperating outside the arena to help repel the Sunanin who were on their way to support the Auto Shinobi who were already inside. With Lee managing those who charged in from the front and Neji keeping watch on their backs and eliminating anyone who got too close, Team Guy was cooperating. While other Chunin arrived to either finish off the resistors or capture those who were unconscious or surrendered, Tenten was spinning her repaired meteor hammers and sending them flying over her teammates' heads, allowing them to smash into the various nin that were approaching. After Hinata began working with Ino and Choji, the two of them performed flawlessly together. Hinata made sure to watch over their backs as Choji rolled around like a huge tank and crushed multiple shinobi while Ino used her family's technique to subdue other shinobi. Before long, the worst was over and several dozen shinobi had been killed or captured as Hinata continued to eliminate them one by one. Ino, who appeared to be about to throw up, panted and said, "This is insane." As she assisted the blonde, Hinata said, "Take it easy, Ino." "I'll be fine," argued Ino. "Ino, you're already past your limit," Shoji said as he looked around. "We managed to hold them off here, let's find somewhere safe for us to go and you can lay down and rest." "But," Hinata calmly said, "don't argue with us." She turned to see Kiba and Akamaru defeat a lone Chunin who hadn't even anticipated their approach. "Huh? You see that, Hinata? I'm way better than Naruto, he isn't even here," Kiba gasped. As he left the arena with a dead Auto Nin's body in tow and his Sharingan spinning wildly, Sasuke said, "That's because he went after the bigger threat." Gaara ran off and Naruto went after him. He knew that we can't let that one be alone too long. Kiba questioned in surprise, "Since when do you agree with what Naruto does?" "When I wish I had thought of it first," Sasuke said. "Naruto beat me to the punch on that one. Now let's finish up these invaders. Sakura already went to help get the civilians out into the shelters, we should do the same." "Agreed." Hinata nodded as they left, and even though she doesn't particularly like Sasuke and Kiba, they were all prepared to put aside their differences for their home when it was in danger. Rukia, who was still low on chakra, was protecting the medical area because Ichigo was still out of the fight when all of a sudden a large group of shinobi were coming toward her. As a flurry of ice needles struck the Auto Nin, stopping them in their tracks, a voice at the other end of the hallway said, "Hyuden. Sabama Fubuki, Swallow Snowstorm." As the other girl approached her, Rukia nodded and said, "Haku." As she built an ice wall to keep more shinobi from reaching them, Haku nodded and said, "Rukia. Good to see you again. Better lay low here." "Agreed. I'm still drained from my fights, and Ichigo is still in bad shape." Rukia gave a nod. As she sat in front of the wall, ensuring she could keep it up, Haku said, "Be thankful he's in this good shape. Naruto did worse to Zabuza. Renji was causing chaos in the village by having Zabumaru fully unsealed and slicing through his opponents with the enormous blade. It was not long before he found himself in the situation he sought, surrounded by shinobi. Renji yelled, "Roar Zabumaru," as he extended the blade above his head, allowing it to gather centrifugal force before slicing through a number of shinobi who were unable to move quickly enough to avoid it. Two figures came toward the eastern gate, where a number of Auto Nin were, as the village was engulfed in violence. One was dressed similarly to Ichigo and his group, with the exception that he was wearing a white coat with no sleeves and black embroidery on the hem, and the number 6 was displayed in a diamond on his back. He had a katana of his own by his side, and white headdresses were in his jet black hair. He exuded a sense of nobility and had slate gray eyes. The other was nearly his complete opposite. This man was dressed casually and relaxedly in a dark green shirt and pants underneath a brown coat with a white diamond pattern running down the bottom half of it. The other man's coat reached his lower legs, whereas this one only reached the beginning of his legs, making it shorter. The relaxed man had a fan in one hand, getas on his feet, and a floppy bucket hat with stripes of green and white that hid his pale blonde hair and cast shadows over his eyes. He had a very strange looking sword in his other hand, with a crimson tassel hanging from its base and a pommel, shaped overlap 3 times, the hilt's grip, which was gently decorated in black, bent forward at the end. A U-shaped guard with a flower petal design that covered 3 inches of blade was used in place of a conventional guard. The guard's base featured a red string that was wrapped around the hilt 3 times, with a folded paper decoration on the front and a 3-loop bow on the back. The blade was slightly thicker than the typical katana and had a silver edge on a black background. It was somewhat short and slender, with a slanted edge that resembled a razor rather than tapering to a point at the tip. The man with the black hair said, "I told you we were going to be late." The other man laughed and said, "I said I was sorry, I didn't think that I'd sleep so late." "Who are they?" inquired an Auto Nin. The commander yelled, "Doesn't matter. Kill them," as they rushed the two. The black-haired man said, "It seems we have enemies." He vanished from view and then reappeared behind a few of the shinobi, dropping them after giving them multiple slashes. The blonde agreed, "That it does Byakuya-kun." He swung his blade and exclaimed, "Sing, Benihime." A red chakra burst from it, slicing through the remaining Auto Nin and causing their dead bodies to fall to the ground. As they entered the village, Byakuya said, "Well, Kazuki-san, it seems that there was treachery." As Kazuki walked beside Byakuya, he laughed and said, "So it appears. We might as well help them. Besides, we should make sure that our students are all right." Orochimaru put his hands on the ground and raised 2 coffins on top of the cage box. He opened them to reveal the Shodai and Nidaime Hokages inside. Orochimaru inserted 2 kunai into the back of each cage's head before they could respond, and the 2 attacked. After exchanging glances, A and Mei stopped the two resurrected Hokages, with A going after Tobimaru Senju and Mei pursuing Hashirama Senju. As he called forth his renowned partner, Enma, Sarutobi cautioned, "Be careful, those two can't be stopped without sealing them." As she leapt to avoid the worst of a swarm of trees that were rushing toward her, Mei answered, "Noted." She quickly began to flash through the hand signs. Yoden. Yagan Garobu. Lava release. Lava globs. Mei quickly spat out a number of large lava bursts that hit Hashirama and sent him skidding back as they burned through him. He quickly recovered and returned to the battle. A had activated his lightning release armor, or Raiden no Yoroi, and had taken the battle to Tobimaru, who was completely outmatched by the Raikage, who was faster than him and was using his nintaijutsu to easily defeat the Hokage. The resurrected Kage's only advantage was that he was impervious to death. Sarutobi dealt with his treacherous pupil while the Mizukage and the Raikage held the two Edo Tensei Hokages at bay. Enma informed Sarutobi that the blade would hurt him, and Orochimaru had Kusanagi out. The two engaged in combat during a dance in which Sarutobi had to exercise extreme caution. While Orochimaru took a few blows from his former teacher, which he was shocked he could have delivered, he narrowly avoided Orochimaru's strikes that should have struck. During their battle, the other two Kages eventually succeeded in rendering their opponents sufficiently stunned for Mei to seal them. She did this by striking their feet with her Yagan Garobu technique, then rising up to seal them inside a solid stone pillar that rendered them immobile. The two then turned their attention to Orochimaru, who came to the realization that he was in a much worse situation than he would have liked to be in and that, although he had some options, they would not work out well for him. As he avoided a blow from Sarutobi, Orochimaru swore, "The tables have turned." As Mei and A approached from the sides, Sarutobi retorted, "Just give up, Orochimaru." Orochimaru responded, "Not likely." He made a number of clones and allowed them to divert the three Kages while the Sound Four broke down the barriers and assisted their leader in getting away. One of them even spat out an odd web that ensnared the Anbu that was going after them. Looking at the escaping Sannin, A snorted, "HMPH, that was pathetic." "I wouldn't say that." Sarutobi exhaled. "We now have two revived Hokages that can't be killed and no way of stopping them. Untold numbers of people dead or injured, and the village damaged." Mei pointed to a huge beast that was now standing in the forest and said, "And a giant tanuki in the forest. This is just getting better." A giggled, "Almost wish my brother was here." "Isn't that supposed to be that Subaku no Gara kid?" Mei inquired. With a pale expression, Sarutobi said, "Yes," and Naruto went after him. When the invasion began, Naruto saw Gaara take off with a deranged expression on his face. Kyuubi had warned Naruto that the Ichibi would go crazy if he was left alone for too long. Soon after leaving the village, the two were safely separated and facing each other in the forest's trees. Gaara smiled and said, You will please mother." "You mean Shukaku?" Naruto responded, "The deranged demon that you've got in your stomach." Gaara yelled, "Give me your blood," as he held out his transformed arm to Naruto, who had just fallen from the branch and was armed. Naruto fired at Gaara, who merely leapt aside, and he swung his arm to shoot a volley of sand bullets at the blonde, who killed anyone who approached too closely. With Gaara's sand covering more of his body every second, the two skidded to a halt and turned to face one another. After doing some quick math, Naruto concluded that if Gaara continued to change at his current rate, he would turn into a miniature Shukaku in a few minutes and become much more difficult to defeat. "Kit, you're going to need to work very quickly. Shukaku may not be the most powerful in terms of strength, but he is still a Biju," Kyuubi cautioned. Then Naruto complained, "I know." As he attempted to identify the weak point in the Sunanin's transformation, Naruto created several hundred clones by jumping down multiple branches and gave them orders to attack Gaara. Before long, he saw precisely what he was searching for. Gaara had developed a tail, and Naruto decided that the best place to strike was directly beneath it. He might break the transformation before it was finished if he could hit it with a sufficiently large explosion. Naruto pulled out a kunai, wrapped the tag around it, and took careful aim before ordering the other clones to intensify their attack. With perfect timing, the blade struck just below the tail, shattering the sand with a loud boom. Gaara stood there, slightly exhausted but still fully capable of fighting. Gaara yelled, "Why? Why do you fight me?" "I fight you because I know what you're going through. Probably better than anyone alive," replied Naruto. "I was hated and shunned by my village too. Hell, I still am to a degree. But I found precious people, those that really care about me and want me around." "A weakness?" spit out Gaara. Naruto calmly answered, "No, they are my strength. It's because of them that I fight." As he changed into the full Sized Shukaku, Gaara roared. Then prove it, prove that you are stronger by having those connections, best me if you can Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto bit his thumb and flashed through the hand signs, putting his hand on the ground and calling forth Gamabunta. Never make it easy for me, he grumbled. As he turned to face the enormous Shukaku, the boss toad questioned, what is it you brat? Oh, you sure know how to pick your opponents, picking on a Biju. Sorry, but if we don't stop him he's going to turn this entire area into another desert, replied Naruto. After noticing that Gaara had sagged forward, Naruto blinked before the enormous Tanuki began speaking. Staring at the two, he exclaimed with delight, I'm finally out, and there's someone to kill. After taking a deep breath, Shukaku blasted them with a condensed ball of air. As he leapt into the air, Gamabunta yelled, hold on. Sweden. Teppadama gunshot. Gamabunta then threw enormous water spheres at the Biju, who retaliated with his Renka Dan drilling air bullet. Gamabunta appeared to have a plan when the two soon squared off again. Listen. The only way to stop this guy is to wake up his container. You're going to need to get in close, so I need you to henge me into something with claws so that I can grab him. Gamabunta clarified. Then all you have to do is wake that kid up. Sounds like a plan. Naruto nodded as he began to concentrate his chakra. After a short while, he put his hand on Gamabunta's back, releasing the chakra, and the two of them emerged in a cloud of smoke, changed to resemble the Kyuubi. You! Roared Shukaku, attempting to strike them with a lash. After evading his blows, the transformed duo let go of the henge and Naruto leapt off Gamabunta's head and landed on top of Shukaku's head, heading in the direction of Gaara. But Shukaku wouldn't have any of that, and soon arms of sand were attempting to seize him. Naruto was quicker than the Biju thought he was, and he was able to get past the arms and reach Gaara, who then gave the red-headed teen a heel kick to the head, waking him up and making the Biju vanish. The two landed on top of two trees and gazed at one another as the sand fell away and Gamabunta vanished. Naruto smirked and said, so I win? As Gaara gasped, obviously running low on chakra and nearing the end of his hope. Gaara gasped, no. I won't lose to you. Why, because you think that because I have people that I care for that I am weak? Naruto responded, I just used those connections to best you. Why? Why do you have people that care for you and I don't? Gaara yelled. His expression was sad. Because I know what you've been through, but I didn't let that stop me. I fought through the pain and made a future for myself. You were faced with a hard life and you tried, but somewhere along the way you gave up. What you need to do is stand back up and try again. You don't ever fail until you quit. Gaara continued to stare at him for a moment before he felt tears well up in his eyes, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Naruto extended his hand and said, Gaara, you already have one friend. And a friend isn't afraid to knock some sense into a friend. As Naruto leapt across the opening and slugged the red-haired teenager, allowing him to fall a little before he straightened himself and landed on a branch, Gaara blinked. After a brief moment of laughter at what had transpired, Gaara sat down and collapsed, exhausted from the altercation. The adversaries were halted and either killed or captured throughout the village. When the final death reports came in at the end of the day, Konohagakure had lost a surprisingly small number of people, nearly 400 shinobi and almost 100 civilians. A third of Sanagakure's forces had been lost in the fighting, and the remainder had either been captured or surrendered. Otogakure suffered a devastating blow when they lost over 3/4 of their forces. Those who survived withdrew with the intention of securing the borders against any potential counterattack. As a result, the Konohagakure invasion ended, and a tense tension spread throughout the world. Repairs had already begun the day after the invasion, with shinobi assisting civilians in clearing debris and repairing various buildings. Sarutobi was meeting with clan heads, a number of higher-ranking Jonin, the Mizukage, and the Reikage during this time to determine the Chunin exam results. Well, it is obvious that the 3 Sanagakure shinobi should be disqualified. A Jonin calmly replied. They helped plan this whole thing. Agreed. The council and I will discuss the matter of Sanagakure later. For now let us focus on the remaining shinobi. Sarutobi gave a nod. With nods of agreement, Mei said, let's start with our recommendations. I move for Naruto to be promoted. Agreed here. I replied, Kid did well in his matches and even helped stop a rampaging Jinchuruki, not something that should be taken lightly. Any objections? Sarutobi asked, and Ebisu was the only one to speak after a few moments of muttering. Hokage. Sama, that boy, is still largely untested. I doubt his fitness for the promotion to Chunin. Ebisu said. Sarutobi questioned, you saw his matches yourself, what do you base this off of? My intuition, along with his past actions. Allow me to test him and see if he is capable of becoming a Chunin. As the other Kage and Jonin nodded, Sarutobi retorted, you may test him, but the promotion is still granted. Next I move for Rukia Kuchiki to be promoted. Agreed. A Jonin grinned. Her battles showed her tactical capabilities are high and she has much potential. Any objections? Inquired Sarutobi. They carried on discussing who should be promoted and who should stay in their current position after no one spoke up, and after a few hours they had finally come to a consensus. All of the participants were summoned to the council chambers to learn the outcome once it was reached. Some of them appeared to be in pretty bad shape as they stood there, while others appeared to be doing much better. First let us congratulate all of you. Sarutobi started by saying, you have all performed marvelously in these exams and all show excellent potential, however only a few of you showed the necessary level to make the rank of Chunin. Omoi from Kumogakure, you have been given the rank of Chunin due to masterful planning and quick adaptation to a powerful opponent. Rukia Kuchiki from Kirigakure, you have been promoted to the rank of Chunin due to your own masterful planning and ability to gauge an opponent in a trying situation. From Konohagakure, Hinata Hyuga, Shino Aburame, and Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze have all been promoted due to their performance during the exams and during the invasion. Congratulations to all of you who have been promoted, and to those that weren't, you will learn from this and do better next time, I hope. Dismissed. Before leaving the room where Ichigo was soon laughing and giving Naruto a back pat, the shinobi all bowed to the Hokage. Way to go Blondie, he exclaimed. Promoted to Chunin already, shame I couldn't have given a better showing. Rukia calmly answered, that's because you fought him in the first round. She then grinned at her teammate, who gave her a long look before laughing. He laughed and said, well at least one of us got promoted. I have read the reports of your fights and I am impressed with your growth, Byakuya said as he and Kazuki walked up. Kazuki chuckled and said, yep. But you still have a ways to go, Ichigo-kun. When Ichigo noticed Naruto about to leave, he sighed and said, hey hold on a sec. Naruto stopped and turned to face Ichigo, who pulled him over to meet his senseis, Kazuki. Sensei, Byakuya. Sensei, this is Naruto, the guy that beat me in the first round. Looking at Naruto, Kazuki chuckled and said, ah, so this is the kid that creamed you. You have talent, I can see that. No wonder Zabuza-san respects you so much. Thanks. Naruto replied, I don't mean to be rude, but I should go see my sensei. Byakuya nodded as Naruto left, and he soon discovered Kurenai and his teammates waiting for him outside. Of course. It is a pleasure to meet you, young man. Kurenai ruffled his hair and grinned, saying, way to go, Naruto. You all did great. Hinata acknowledged, I'm shocked that we all were promoted. Shino nodded and said, I agree, this is most unusual. We just made a good showing of ourselves. We worked hard and earned it. Naruto grinned. Now let's celebrate. They were soon on their way to a restaurant to celebrate their promotion after Kurenai grinned at this. The promotion caused a general commotion back in the council chamber. A civilian counselor cried out, Hokage. Sama, surely you can't be denying Sasuke the rank of Chunin? I am. Sarutobi replied, he did not show the necessary skills needed to lead missions. Homura said, but that Brad did. He did. Heishi replied, he showed forethought to his actions, and when the invasion started he went to face an opponent that had the potential to destroy the entire village, on his own. He showed selflessness and a good understanding of what would be ordered if orders could be given. Komura questioned, and Sasuke? Sama didn't. No, he did not. He went too far in both his matches, showing that he still has much to learn about being a Chunin. Naruto on the other hand showed the perfect amount of restraint and proper respect for an opponent, such as when he helped stem the bleeding on Ichigo Kurosaki after their match. Sarutobi calmly replied, Naruto has earned this promotion. Some more time as a genin will not hurt Sasuke any, and it might teach him some humility. The civilians muttered this a few times before Choza finally spoke. He brought them all back to the topic at hand by saying, anyway, we're here for a reason. We need to discuss what we are going to do about Sunagakure. Yes, let's figure out how to handle this mess. Sarutobi exhaled. The damage done to the village was minimal due to the timely intervention by our shinobi. However, the problem here is bigger than we thought. Sunagakure has sent us a missive saying that the Kazekage was assassinated some time before the invasion and that someone was impersonating him. They have plausible deniability in the matter, however we can demand repayment for damages and loss of life. Danzo said, startling everyone by voicing his opinion, that would not be wise. The old war hawk rarely attended these kinds of gatherings, and when he did, it was a sign that something significant was about to happen. Sarutobi questioned, what would you suggest then? We sue for peace. The cause of this attack was the fact that we have been accepting far too many missions from their daimyo. We offer them one of two options. The first being that we will limit down our own missions taken from their nation so that their village will have a chance at recovery. The other being that we keep the course and the next time that they do this we invade them. Danzo proceeded to nod. This way they have a chance to reinforce our alliance, or break away, and we will know where we stand with them. Knowing that this was the ideal compromise for both those who wanted peace and those who wanted retaliation, Sarutobi nodded to his former teammate and said, "Now that this is settled, I must ask that the civilians step out so we may discuss shinobi matters. I cannot see any reason to say no to this." An excellent idea, Danzo-san. When the non-combatant half of the council departed and the meeting resumed, there were a few murmurs. Inoichi questioned, "What is it that we need to discuss?" "The matter that we have two revived and indestructible Hokages." Sarutobi exhaled. "I have looked into the notes that the Nidaime had on the Edo Tensei, and the only way to get rid of them for good is to have the Shinigami devour their souls." Startled by what Sarutobi was implying, Homura muttered, "But that would mean—" "I know. It is why I am not doing this just yet. The Mizukage has them locked up nice and tight, but it won't last forever." Sarutobi clarified, "It is why I intend to name the Godem Hokage soon. I will need to confer with Jiraiya about this matter, and we will discuss suggestions as to who will take my place. Once it has been decided, I will give my life to send my former senseis back to the afterlife." As the shinobi and elders looked at one another, trying to picture the village without the elderly shinobi in charge, the room fell silent. Heishi finally asked, "Is there no other way?" expressing what everyone was thinking. "No, I have checked and read through the notes, even going through the notes that Orochimaru had on the matter from the lab that we raided. The only other way is for Orochimaru to undo the jutsu, and we know that he will not, seeing as how he need only wait, and eventually when our guard is down he will have them unleashed and we will be forced to fight against two almost unstoppable shinobi." Sarutobi murmured, "I will inform you all of when this will be handled. Until then you are dismissed." Except for Danzo, who lingered to speak with his old teammate, all of the shinobi and elders stood up and bowed before departing. "It's interesting to see how things have changed," Danzo said. "Indeed. Hard to believe that we were once so young and our only worry was keeping up with our training for sensei." Sarutobi laughed. "I need to tell you something," Danzo said, starting with Izorin. With a frown on his face, Sarutobi questioned, "What is it?" "As you know, I have had Root remain active in maintaining various information pools. One that has come to my attention relates to a search for information that you wanted, regarding Naruto." Sarutobi cried out, "You found the ones that had the seals put on him?" "I have." Danzo replied, "I admit that one was put on by myself. On the off chance that he were to turn rouge, I had a kill seal placed on him. However, my fears were unfounded and he has proved himself to be an excellent shinobi, loyal to a fault. I had the activation seal destroyed once I saw this, more than 2 years ago." "I see." Sarutobi exclaimed. "Danzo, what you did was wrong. However, you acted in the best interest of the village and no harm was done, so I will only place a fine on you that you will have to pay directly to Naruto." "That is fair," Danzo said. "The other seals took some time to trace back, however I have managed to piece it all together. The mental suppressant seal was done by Tsugi Yamanaka. The chakra suppressant on the Kyuubi's seal was done by a former Anbu, however he is already dead, having died during the invasion. However, I have frozen his accounts so he may pay a fine to Naruto since the proper punishment can't be performed. The second chakra suppressant seal was done by Heizo Hyuga, who is currently out on a mission and is due to return in a few days. I have left orders with the gate guards to detain him when he arrives. The growth suppressant seal was placed by Chosu Akamichi, and he along with Tsugi have been taken in by Anbu and are being questioned as we speak." Sarutobi nodded and expressed gratitude once more for his teammates' thoroughness in obtaining information. "I see. The 3 still living shall be removed from active duty until further notice and imprisoned for a period of 4 years, unless something more incriminating comes up." Sarutobi gave a nod. As they got ready to depart, Danzo nodded and said, "Of course. Who do you intend to have replace you?" "I'm not sure. Jiraiya won't do since he has his information network to manage and will need to be out of the village most of the time." Sarutobi thought about it. "Tsunade is an option, as are you." "I must decline." Danzo grinned. "Once upon a time I would have given my arm for that position, but I have come to realize that I best serve the village from the shadows." "You may be the only other option." Sarutobi added, "Tsunade will not be easily convinced to take the job." "I think I know someone that might be able to," Danzo said. "Send Naruto with Jiraiya to find her. That should help smooth things over with her since he is very much like her lost loved ones." As they left the room, Sarutobi retorted, or it could set her over the edge. But there is nothing to lose on the matter. And this is a good chance to give Naruto his first chance to lead a mission. Danzo smiled and said, grooming him up for the position of Rokudame? Eventually. Given his heritage, it wouldn't surprise me. Sarutobi nodded. He has all the right signs to be a good leader. All that is missing is experience. Something that he can get in abundance on missions. Danzo gave a nod. If it is any consolation, I will keep an eye on him after you leave. I appreciate it. Sarutobi replied, we may have had our differences, but in the end we want the same thing, Konohagakure to prosper. As they said their goodbyes, Danzo nodded, all too true. Jiraiya was waiting when Naruto was summoned to Sarutobi's office the following day. What's up? Inquired Naruto. Sarutobi handed Naruto the scroll and said, I have a mission for you. This will be an A-rank mission due to the length and the difficulty of finding the target, not to mention the possibility of resistance, he said. Naruto nodded while reading. It says I can pick 2 others to join this mission. Track down Tsunade Senju. Yes. But you will be the one in charge. Jiraiya will be accompanying you on the off chance that you need the assistance and to convince Tsunade to come back. Sarutobi clarified. It's going to be a tracking mission, so my best bet would be to have a Hyuga and an Inuzuka with me. I know that Hinata is free, and since we were once teammates, we will be able to work together easily. As for the Inuzuka, who is free? Naruto hummed as he considered the type of team he would need. As he gave the blonde the list of the clan's shinobi's current activities, Sarutobi grinned at Naruto's train of thought. After reading each name, Naruto let out a frustrated sigh. Looks like I have to take Kiba, seeing as how most of them are already on missions or are out on patrol. Naruto murmured. Jiraiya questioned, there is no one else? None that would be willing to take orders from a 13-year-old kid. Replied Naruto. The only other 2 that were free were Sume and Hana, and I know that both of them are too busy to handle this sort of thing. Very well then. Sarutobi replied, gather what supplies you will need and inform your teammates. The sooner you start, the sooner you can find Tsunade and come home. Naruto simply nodded as he and Jiraiya left, making their way directly to Naruto's house, where he promptly picked up some supplies he believed he might need and left Kushina a note alerting her to his impending month-long mission. After finishing that, he approached and knocked on the Hyuga compound's gate. It took a moment to open, and the branch member realized this was serious business when they saw Jiraiya and Naruto together. He said, how may I help you? To Jiraiya's surprise, Naruto explained in a very businesslike manner, could you please inform Hinata Hyuga that she has been requested for a mission and that she will need to pack for a month's travel if she accepts. The branch member went inside, nodded, and came back a short while later. Hinata. Sama says that she will meet you at the gates. Which ones shall I inform her of? Naruto nodded and said, thank you. Tell her the west gate. Following that, he and Jiraiya turned and headed for the Inuzuka compound, where howling could soon be heard. Kiba responded with a smirk while rapping on the gate. He snorted, what do you want, dope? I'm here to inform you that you're coming with me on a mission. Naruto said, pack for a month and meet us at the west gate. As he closed the gate, Kiba snorted, fine. Naruto shrugged and turned to face Jiraiya, who merely shook his head in response to the action before following him to the gate. Naruto quickly gave them the mission after the 2 others arrived in just 5 minutes. So we just track her down and get her to come back? Easiest to rank ever. Kiba laughed. Don't get full of yourself. Jiraiya responded, we are bound to run into trouble. As they departed, Kiba merely snorted. Naruto had them form a diamond, with Hinata at the back, Jiraiya and himself at the sides, and Kiba at the front. After traveling for the majority of the morning and early afternoon, they arrived at a sizable town where Naruto informed them that they would be staying. Kiba questioned, why? There's still plenty of daylight. 2 reasons. First is that we don't know where we are going exactly. This is a crossroads town, meaning that no matter which way we need to go we can do so from here. Second is that I am sure that Jiraiya has informants in town that he wants to meet up with and help point us in the right direction. Naruto clarified as Kiba growled at the blonde for his straightforward response. Naruto is right. Jiraiya replied, Tsunade travels a lot, so I need to confer with some contacts to get a general read on her. And we might as well stay in relative comfort tonight instead of camping if we can avoid it. As they made their way deeper into the town, Kiba simply huffed. Naruto gestured toward a hotel where they could stay after a short while. As they got closer, Naruto saw that Kiba and Jiraiya had halted and were gazing at a stunning woman. Naruto sighed and said, oh geez, Kiba said, man, she's hot. You are way too young for such a lady kid. Jiraiya responded, I'm a different story however. The woman gave them a wink before Naruto could comment on the situation, and he realized that they would not listen to him anymore. Kiba said, "She winked at me." As he turned and gave Naruto some cash, Jiraiya yelled, "No way, she winked at me. For the hotel room, get two." Before he could say anything more, Jiraiya sprinted off and was soon on his way with the woman. Naruto sighed as he took Kiba and entered the hotel, obtaining 2 rooms. Pathetic. A brief argument arose regarding the rooming arrangement, but Naruto ultimately put an end to the complaints by literally knocking Kiba unconscious and throwing him into the room he would be sharing with Jiraiya. When they were in their proper positions, Hinata read one of the scrolls her mother had left her, and Naruto closed his eyes and began to meditate. The knock on the door soon caused Naruto's eyes to open. While a clone opened the door and he moved into the blind spot between the door and the clone, prepared to attack if it was an enemy, he frowned and gestured for Hinata to leave the room through the window. Naruto noticed 2 men standing there as the door opened. They were both slashed to indicate that they were Rouges and were both wearing headbands from a shinobi village. With his Konoha headband revealing his true identity, the shorter of the 2 said, "Naruto Uzumaki, come with us." The other laughed, clutching the bandaged sword on his back and flashing his shark grin. "Or fight and we can make this fun." The 2 Rouges grinned as the clone uttered, "Or I fight and win." The clone dispersed as Naruto struck, providing him with some cover as he slashed, forcing the 2 into the hallway where the confined space would work to his advantage. As he leveled his sword, the swordsman chuckled and said, "Gaki is good. I'm looking forward to this." Naruto quickly recognized the other man and cautioned, "Don't underestimate him." Gazing at the renegade Konoha nin, Naruto said, "Itachi Uchiha. Never thought I'd get to cross blades with both Uchiha brothers." Itachi blinked in response, grinning and nodding to the other man to handle the blonde. With a laugh, the blue-skinned man swung down the enormous bandaged blade, ready to defeat Naruto before he could fight back. He failed to account for the fact that Naruto was much faster than he had anticipated and was already in his element before he knew it. Naruto's blade was drawn and flashing in the direction of his opponent, who swung his blade down as he did so after jumping back to avoid the blow. Before striking, Naruto rolled back and dodged the enormous blade. Naruto jumped off the walls and ceiling and took the fight to the swordsman, who dodged and blocked the blows with the flat of his enormous blade. Soon after, Naruto understood that he was facing a skilled swordsman who was comparable to his mother and that he couldn't win by using merely ostentatious tactics. Naruto began channeling his chakra into the blade, swinging it in the direction of his opponent as he skidded back down the hall and avoided a swing from the enormous blade. Naruto was on edge as he braced himself for whatever might occur after yelling, "Kase no kata," and swinging his katana at his opponent, who merely raised his blade to the wind and began to laugh. Naruto knew he was in trouble the moment he saw the blade absorb the attack and blinked in shock. The man chuckled and said, "You're out of luck, Gaki. Samahata devours chakra." "Kisame, stop playing around," Itachi replied. "If this goes on much longer, Jiraiya might return." At this, Naruto blinked and realized right away that he only needed to run out of time. He sheathed his blade and smirked as he readied himself to battle Kisame using Jutsu. "Think that's going to work on one of the former Kiri no Shinobigatana Shichinen Shu?" Kisame asked, grinning. "Jutsu? Crippled him with it so he would never have been a shinobi or a swordsman without a very skilled medic." Naruto smiled back, "Worked on Zabuza." At Naruto's boast, Kisame blinked and then smiled even more. Kisame chuckled and said, "So you took down Zabuza, but I'm leagues above him." As he waited for the impasse to end, Naruto answered, "Yet you both make the same mistake." Ultimately, they both moved simultaneously and struck, with Zabuza bringing Samahata up to his right side to deflect the blow. He was spinning as he drew his katana, slashing his chest, leaving a deep wound that made the missing nin leap away, blood streaming from the wound. It was only too late that he realized Naruto had struck with the sheath first. The moment Naruto saw Kisame holding Samahata tightly, he smiled and said, "Hidden Mitsurugi Ryu Jutsu Soryasan Ikazuki, Twin Dragon Flash Thunder." Then he noticed that the wound was healing itself, and his eyes grew wide. "Not too bad, Gaki," Kisame sighed. "Been a long time since someone managed to actually wound me." Naruto questioned, "How? That should have been lethal." Kisame grinned and said, "It was. But Samahata can heal me." He demonstrated how the enormous sword had partially fused with him. "Well shit." Naruto grumbled, "No wonder you said you're better than Zabuza. With a sword like that I can believe it." "Enough. Capture him, Kisame, we've wasted enough time." Kisame told his partner, "This kid is really good, easier said than done." The two stared at Naruto as he said, "Plus the fight hasn't started yet. I'm just stalling." Naruto gestured to Jiraiya, who was now standing behind them with the woman's body that had been used as a distraction, before either of the two noob.nin could move. Hinata stood next to him, her eyes blazing with rage. "I'd call it a day, boys." Jiraiya issued a warning, "Otherwise things won't go so well for you." Shining, Kisame said, "Hey. We can take you." As Kisame gave him a perplexed look, Itachi calmly said, "No Kisame, we're leaving. With Naruto facing us as well and most of his abilities unknown to us, it is wiser to retreat for now. If both of us were to face Jiraiya, then we might win." Kisame looked at Naruto and smiled, snorting, "HMPH, fine. You got lucky today, Gaki. Next time I'll destroy you." Before Jiraiya could do anything, Itachi and Kisame took off running, jumping over him and out a window. Naruto grinned back, "Next time I'll be stronger." "Everyone okay?" inquired Jiraiya. Hinata nodded, "Yes. Kiba is knocked out at the moment, but I did that." Naruto added, "And I am okay, but concerned as to why I just had two S-class missing nin fighting me." Naruto nodded toward his room, and Jiraiya sighed, "Okay. I can explain that." Naruto asked Hinata to keep watch so that the two wouldn't try anything amusing, and Jiraiya nodded and moved over there. Before long, Naruto was sitting in the room, waiting for Jiraiya to explain, while he stared at him. "Those two, they're part of a group known as the Akatsuki. I don't know what their true goal is, but they are interested in the Jinchuruki. All of them are S rank, and they are usually paired off. Orochimaru was once a member of this group, so it's how I learned about them." Jiraiya started off. Naruto exclaimed in disbelief, "Orochimaru collaborated with others prior to creating Otogakure?" Jiraiya clarified, "It was more to get close to Itachi and try to take the Sharingan. But now he has Sasuke marked and will likely try to take him later." Naruto gave a wink. "Let's stay on topic, just how many of those maniacs are there?" "9 to my knowledge. I've only gathered intel on a handful of them, so I can't tell you everything. All I know is this: they started small, doing some cloak and dagger work, but they are starting to move into their true plan. I have my spies keeping an eye out for them and to try and figure out what they want, but I'm not even entirely sure that they will have even a slight chance of success." Jiraiya clarified. Leaning against the wall, Naruto scowled as he took it all in. "Do you think that they can capture all the Jinchuruki?" replied Naruto. "Most likely they can. All of them are S-rank Rouges, and from what I've gathered they always work in pairs. 2 S-ranks against 1 Jinchuruki doesn't look good for that Jinchuruki, as you can probably tell." "Yeah. Itachi didn't even fight and Kisame managed to heal the only real wound I managed to inflict on him." Naruto exhaled. After a brief period of silence, Jiraiya got up and turned to go. As Jiraiya left the room and Hinata returned, she turned to Naruto and said, "Get some rest, we will leave tomorrow." She saw him trembling and asked, "Are you alright, Naruto-kun?" before a low laugh eventually leaked out of his throat. "No. But I have something to aim for now." Naruto laughed, "Next time, I won't lose." Hinata only grinned at Naruto because she could see that he had used a terrifying loss to his advantage and knew that this would help him advance even more in his quest to become Hokage. The following day, they set out, with Tsunade expected to travel to one of the biggest towns in High no Kuni. As they went, there was a hush over them all. Kiba was upset about how Naruto had treated him earlier, Hinata was concerned about Naruto, Jiraiya was thinking about this mission and the reasons behind his negative feelings, and Naruto was mulling over his training options when he kept thinking that he needed to complete the task at hand. When they arrived in the town in the middle of the afternoon, Naruto made the decision to issue the directives. "Alright, according to Jiraiya's informant, Tsunade should be here for the next few days. She is a terrible gambler, so start by checking the casinos and gambling dens. If they haven't turned up anything, then check with the bars. I'm going to go get us the hotel room and then check around at the bars and see if they have seen her," Naruto instructed. Hinata nodded before heading in the opposite direction from Kiba, who merely gave Naruto a glare before leaving. Soon after, Jiraiya and Naruto were given hotel rooms, and they left to speak with the different bars lining the town's outskirts. Jiraiya and Naruto talked about additional training as they strolled. "Well, I could teach you the Rasengan. It is your right to learn it since your dad made it," Jiraiya said. "That's fine." Naruto gave a wink. "We can start tomorrow. Can I do this and still search for Tsunade?" Jiraiya shrugged as he stopped by a store and purchased several dozen rubber balls and several balloons that hadn't been inflated yet. "Sure. You can even have a clone searching while you train. You'll need these for your training." They walked, and Naruto just stared at the old pervert before shrugging and taking them. They all reassembled at the hotel by dusk and called it a night. The following morning, Naruto began working on the Rasengan and made his clone to aid in the hunt for Tsunade. It took him a while to get down the first stage, but eventually Naruto figured out how to make the water balloon pop. He then began the second step, grateful that Jiraiya had given him all the instructions before he left. The team came back that evening and reported that they had not been able to locate Tsunade. This could be bad. Jiraiya murmured. Tsunade usually doesn't stay around a single place for too long. Kiba questioned, so what do we do if she leaves? We let Jiraiya consult his network again and we follow her, Naruto murmured. Hinata recalled, but we only have 1 month. I know. Naruto murmured, if we run out of time then we go back to the village and get an extension on the mission. Jiraiya looked at Naruto and said, okay, enough chit-chat. Let's get some rest and we can search again tomorrow. And how's the training going? He asked. Just finished the second step, but my chakra is drained from it. This is harder than I thought. Naruto exhaled. Jiraiya laughed as he and Kiba exited the room, saying, never said it would be easy. The four of them went searching the city the following day, and Naruto joined them this time to practice the final step while preventing a normal balloon from popping. Together, Naruto and Hinata spent the entire day looking through the various casinos, but they were unable to find anything. Naruto nodded toward a bar while he sighed. He sighed and said, let's get something to drink. As they entered, Hinata nodded in agreement, and Naruto almost slapped his face at the woman seated at one of the tables. When Hinata also saw Tsunade, she questioned, is that her? Naruto sighed as he entered and made his way directly to Tsunade, saying, yep. Go get the others please. Knowing that the others would want to arrive as soon as possible, Hinata turned and departed immediately. When Naruto stopped by her table, the woman glared at him, and her assistant gave him a questioning look. Tsunade. Naruto nodded. Tsunade snarled, who are you Gaki? As he sat down opposite her, Naruto nodded and said, I was sent by the Hokage to find you. Tsunade spat. Why? I want nothing more to do with the village. He needs you. Replied Naruto. Orochimaru attacked the village and has put us in a bind due to something he left behind. Gigi can handle it, but he needs you back in the village. Her assistant laughed and asked, Gigi? As Tsunade looked at the boy and saw that he resembled Minato exactly, she asked, what does he need me for exactly? To be his replacement. Naruto breathed deeply. He is going to have to sacrifice himself to stop this threat and he wants you to. Tsunade glared at him and spat. No, I will not become Hokage of that village, she said. And why not? Replied Naruto. To become Hokage is almost every shinobi's dream. Because only a fool wants that position. As he looked directly into her eyes, Naruto said, then I am a fool. I will become Hokage, just like my father before me. Her assistant frowned and said, Father, Minato Namikaze. Naruto said, my dad died to defend the village. Gigi is about to do the same, and he asked for you to take over. Tsunade shot back, only a fool with a death wish takes that title. Tsunade blinked at Naruto and glared at him even more before he continued. You ran away from the village because you lost some precious people. I lived in that village with no one except Gigi to care for me for most of my life. So whose sob story is worse? Naruto started, so your grandfather had a death wish, and saw her glare grow more intense. Tsunade was on the verge of fainting when she suddenly remembered and looked at him intently. As her assistant blinked, she remarked, mainly to herself, you're Kushina's brat. Her question was, Kushina? Tsunade nodded before her eyes hardened once more. Kushina Uzumaki. Now I remember, she and Minato got married. She sent me a letter years ago about being pregnant. Wait, you were alone. What happened to her? Tsunade asked. Got knocked halfway across High no Kuni by the Kyuubi. Naruto responded, lost her memories, she only just recently came back. Her assistant exclaimed, oh. Looking at the young woman beside Tsunade, Naruto said, I'm sorry, I don't believe I got your name. She grinned and said, oh, I'm Shizune. Tsunade. Sama's apprentice. Naruto nodded and said, nice to meet you. He then looked back at Tsunade and asked, and how do you know my mother? I was her Jonin instructor. Tsunade exhaled. Back before I left the village, her team was the only genin team that I took. Jiraiya and the rest of his team entered and moved to the table before Naruto could ask any more questions. Jiraiya nodded and pulled up a chair, saying, Tsunade. Tsunade looked at the elderly pervert and said, Jiraiya, the Gaki here told me why you are all here. I told him no. Naruto shocked Hinata and Kiba by responding, and I still say you're acting like a spoiled child. He was speaking to a renowned shinobi. Tsunade. Jiraiya murmured, at least let me explain why he needs you to come back. I know that. He's going to get himself killed and wants me to take over. The argument ensued. He's going to send the Shodai and Nidaime Hokages back to the afterlife. Jiraiya said and observed her blink with disbelief. Orochimaru revived them in hopes that he could use them to kill Sensei. He failed and now we have them trapped, but for how long is questionable. The only way to stop them is to either make Orochimaru perform the seals to release them, or for someone to summon Shinigami and have their souls eaten by him. When Naruto noticed the feelings in Tsunade's eyes and understood that the act she was performing was a cover for all the suffering she had endured, his scowl softened. Before Tsunade finally spoke, they all sat there silently for a short while. Jiraiya, you know how much it hurts for me to go back. I know. If there was another option we'd take it. Jiraiya replied, but the only other two people that are qualified are already managing vital aspects of the village. Kiba asked, perplexed. Who? Jiraiya for one. Naruto responded, but he has his spy network to manage and can't trust someone else to do that. Jiraiya added, and Danzo. But he's still managing Root. According to Kiba. What's Root? Jiraiya responded, if I tell you, I have to kill you. Top secret. With a sly smile, Naruto turned to face Tsunade, who was attempting to find a way to refuse, but he knew they had her. Tsunade remained silent for a few more seconds. I really don't want to do this, but I can't say no, Tsunade murmured. I'll do it for Sensei, since he is doing this to help the souls of my family. We can leave tomorrow if you like. Jiraiya nodded and got to his feet. Thank you. Tsunade sighed, snatched up her cup, and gulped down the sake. Yeah. Naruto gestured for more sake to be brought over and poured himself a cup as the others quickly left. Naruto toasted, saying, to doing the right thing, even though it hurts. Tsunade questioned, had to do that? Yeah. I found happiness 3 different times and each time I gave it up to keep moving. In the end I went back to the village. The villagers may despise my very existence, but in the end it is still my home, and I will fight to defend it. Naruto replied with a nod. Shizune remarked, must be tough. It can be. But I have people that love me, and I don't intend to back down. I will be Hokage, so just keep that seat warm for me until I'm ready. Naruto laughed. In fact, Tsunade grinned at that and burst out laughing when she understood why they had sent him. Now I know why you're here. You're a lot like Dan and my little brother, Tsunade murmured. As Tsunade grinned, Naruto laughed and said, I guess. If they wanted to be Hokage they can't be all that bad. Shizune left with the pig she was carrying after a few more drinks, and Naruto returned to his hotel room after helping Tsunade back there after another hour of drinking. On their way the following day, Naruto was discussing his mother with Tsunade. Looking at Hinata and Kiba, Tsunade said, I actually had all 3 of your mothers. Really? Inquired Kiba. Yeah. Kushina and Sume used to fight all the time. 2 hotheads. Tsunade murmured. Hinoka often had to calm them down before they pissed me off. Jiraiya laughed and said, sounds a lot like you too. In response, Naruto said, we don't fight. Kiba growled as he said, oh and what do we do? Fighting makes it seem like you had a chance. Naruto shrugged and declared, I win. Kiba yelled, what was that? As he attempted to strike Naruto, but the blonde sidestepped him, grabbed his back, then used the Rasengan to send him hurtling down the street. Jiraiya and Hinata simply shook their heads at this, but Naruto laughed and said, case in point. You taught him the Rasengan? Tsunade replied with a scowl. You realize that just because his father created it doesn't mean he can use it. Maybe, but he has gotten pretty far. Mastered the first 2 steps really fast and he's working on the last step now. Jiraiya replied. Tsunade smirked and said, and how's that going for you? Naruto pulled out a balloon and showed them, saying, almost got it. It doesn't pop but it isn't smooth just yet. He didn't have it down yet because the balloon was lumpy even though it didn't burst. As they walked, Jiraiya said, just keep practicing, you'll get it. They stopped when they caught up to Kiba, who was confused and irritated. After spending the remainder of the day returning to the village, they soon found Sarutobi waiting for them in the Hokage's office. Well done Naruto. Sarutobi laughed. You still have almost 2 weeks left to complete the mission. Naruto answered, figured speed was important. That it is. Sarutobi replied, Tsunade, I trust that they explained why I asked for you to be here. They did. Tsunade murmured, I don't think that this is a good idea, having me take over. But if it's your last wish I can't really say no. Thank you. Sarutobi smiled. I will help you get settled in over the next week and help you understand everything that needs to be done. After that I will take care of our problem. He stopped and looked at Naruto. Now head down to the mission hall and fill out the report Naruto. Jiraiya help him with this so he knows the proper procedure. Jiraiya nodded as Naruto and his group descended with the voucher. Okay. Jiraiya concluded by outlining the various elements that would have to be covered, ranging from the overall chronology to the more crucial specifics like where they located Tsunade and their run.in with the Akatsuki. This final detail was crucial because it would enable them to categorize the issue when it was initially brought to their notice. After finishing, Naruto handed it in, and they were paid. Naruto then dismissed his team and left for home. Naruto yelled, "I'm home," as he entered the house. From the kitchen, Kushina exclaimed, "You're back early." As he walked into the kitchen, Naruto said, "Had an easier time finding Tsunade than we thought. You never told me that she was your sensei." A knock on the door prompted Kushina to frown and respond. It didn't seem important. She went to the door and opened it to see Tsunade and Jiraiya standing there. As they entered, Jiraiya grinned and said, "I thought you'd like to see her." Before long, the four of them were seated at the kitchen table, talking about the past. Naruto inquired, "So what was your team like, Jiraiya?" "Interesting to say the least." Jiraiya murmured, "I had Minato, of course, everyone always remembers him. He was a natural genius, took to jutsu like a fish to water. Then there was Negi Yagami. He was a good kid, didn't have a lot of skill in ninjutsu, but he excelled in taijutsu and weapons. He was a good kid, it was a shame when he died during the war. He died protecting some of his comrades from a battalion of Iwagakure. Took out all but 3 of the 10 that came after him. Then there was Misa Uzumaki." Jiraiya paused here and shook his head, remembering something especially sad. "She was like you, Naruto, she had the Kyuubi sealed in her." "What?" cried Naruto. "Yeah," Kushina exclaimed. "She was my sister, your aunt. We both came here when we were young because we had the best potential to control the Kyuubi, but she had a stronger affinity for it than me, so she had the Kyuubi sealed in her when Mito Uzumaki, a distant relative, died." Naruto inquired, "What happened to her?" "She died." Tsunade responded, "I read the report myself. It says that when she gave birth something went wrong with the seal and she was killed, along with her husband and newborn child." Naruto sighed and said, "Geez. So when she died the Kyuubi ran wild?" "Most likely." Jiraiya responded, "Though it was a shame she died, she was a really kind woman. Even when growing up she was more concerned about others than herself. For example, your dad grew up an orphan, so he had a limited income to work with, so he ate mostly instant ramen." This made Naruto giggle because of the analogy to his dad. When Misa found out, she went ballistic and started cooking for him. Then she dragged Kushina into the mix, and finally I stepped in to save him from Misa's terrible cooking. When Naruto finally stopped laughing, he asked, "Was it really that bad?" "She had no talent in the kitchen." Kushina chuckled, "Misa could burn water." For the remainder of the day, the four of them enjoyed the straightforward conversation they were having while sitting there and laughing. Naruto and all the other shinobi in the village were standing in black. He was there with the others at the funeral for Izoran Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage, a week after he had brought Tsunade back. After using the jutsu to call forth Shinigami, the elderly shinobi sacrificed his soul in order to trap the 2 souls of the former Hokages. After this was finished, Tsunade was given the title of Hokage, and there was a funeral. In his final farewell to the elderly shinobi who had provided him with the best care possible during his childhood, Naruto now stood there, placing his flower on the grave. Naruto understood as he turned to leave that he would have to face his next challenge head on. He would have to do this if he wished to live. He sighed as he entered Tsunade's office and turned to face the elderly woman. He said, "Tsunade, I need some time off." After blinking at this, Tsunade said, "For?" "A training trip. I don't know for how long I'll be gone, but I need to find my former masters and finish what I started," Naruto clarified. "You're going to use that jutsu again?" Tsunade nodded. "I can't tell you no in this matter, for 2 reasons. One is that you are within your right to leave for a training journey, and with the Akatsuki hunting you, the extra training will be beneficial." Naruto inquired, "And the other?" "Sarutobi. Sensei did some research into this technique and found out something interesting. It can only be used 3 times by one person. The first time is an accident, the second is for need, and the third is to repay." "Okay. The first time was an accident." Naruto gave a wink, "And this is for need to get stronger, but repayment?" "It turns out that this technique was only used by one other person, my grandfather. According to his journal, it says that the 3rd trip is to aid those that have helped you. You will feel the call to go when it is time to repay them. It could take weeks, months, or even years before it comes." Tsunade elaborated. As Naruto put it, "All right. So I have your permission to leave?" "Yes, but take someone with you. I am sure that these places can be dangerous and I would like you to come back alive," Tsunade replied. Naruto grinned as he turned to go, saying, "Okay. I'll take Hinata-chan with me." Besides, some of my friends in the other worlds will want to meet her. As the blonde departed, Tsunade sighed and went back to work on the paperwork. If you aren't back before nightfall, I will have you marked down for a training journey. Naruto began flashing through the hand signs and soon found himself and Hinata in his backyard. When he was done and the doorway reopened, Naruto said, "Now hold on tight, I don't want to get separated." As they walked in, Hinata nodded, "Okay Naruto-kun." Before long, Naruto and Hinata were floating across the vast area, and Naruto was identifying pictures of locations he knew from Japan. They came to rest in an alleyway after a short while, and Naruto's gaze began to wander in search of danger. He nodded to Hinata and they began to move after he was positive they hadn't landed in the middle of a battle. Naruto became aware that they were outside of Kyoto and that he had no clue where they were as they emerged from the alley. When Hinata saw Naruto's face, she questioned, "Lost?" Naruto paused and glanced at a newspaper before admitting, "A little. I never really went too far from Kyoto, so I have no clue where we are." "Tokyo," he muttered, shrugging, and resumed his stroll. Hinata inquired, "So what's the plan Naruto-kun?" "I need to find Kenshin. Sensei. Odds are that if the war is over he will be well known and someone that practices Kenjutsu might have an idea where I can find him." Naruto replied while walking. He walked for almost an hour before coming across a dojo. Naruto opened the door and saw a boy about Konohamaru's age approaching them while carrying a shinai. He read, "Kamiya Kashin.Ryu." He frowned as he asked, "Can I help you? Perhaps. I'm looking for someone and I was hoping you might be able to point me in the right direction," said Naruto. He snorted, "Shouldn't you go to the police?" Naruto sighed and said, "Look, kid, could you help me or not?" "Kid?" he yelled. "My name is Maya Jin Yahiko, Tokyo Samurai?" "I'm sorry then Yahiko-san." Hinata interrupted, "But my boyfriend is just trying to find someone, would you please help us?" After blushing a little as he glanced at Hinata, Yahiko grunted and said, "Fine, who are you looking for?" "His name is Himura Kenshin," Naruto said. "I was wondering if you could tell me where he is?" At this, Yahiko leapt and quickly retreated, drawing his shinai. "What do you want with Kenshin? Are you with Shishio?" he yelled. With a bewildered expression on his face, Naruto said, "Shishio? Look, it's clear you know him. Will you just tell me where I can find him?" "No way!" Yahiko yelled. "You've got to be with Shishio, why else would you be wearing a katana in public?" Naruto sighed and slipped into a fighting stance, saying, "I'll just beat it out of him. This is getting nowhere fast." Hinata countered, "Naruto-kun, he's only a child." Naruto turned to face Yahiko and said, "No, he's samurai. A samurai always has his pride, and even if he is young, I won't spit on his." One woman exclaimed, "Yahiko, what's going on?" as she emerged from the dojo and took in the scene. Yahiko was on the ground as Naruto stood over him with the sheath against his throat before she could object any further because he moved so quickly that no one noticed. Word of advice Yahiko-san, never underestimate a practitioner of hidden Mitsurugi.Ryu. Naruto replied, "So where is Kenshin? Sensei?" "Sensei. You know Kenshin?" the woman gasped. "He trained me. Taught me all I knew during the Bakumatsu." Naruto responded, "I came to find him." Yahiko yelled, "He taught you? He taught you but refused to teach me?" Naruto looked at the woman and calmly replied, "It was a long time ago. Where is he?" he asked. "He left. He is heading for Kyoto. Come inside and I will explain everything to you," she replied. Naruto nodded as he assisted Yahiko in getting up, and they all entered. "Thank you." Before the woman spoke, there was a pause of several minutes. "My name is Kamiya Kaoru, and Himura Kenshin has been staying here for several months now," she said. She continued by detailing everything that happened while he was there, including his promise to never kill again, the taking of Asakabato, all of his fights, and, lastly, the problem with Shishio Mikoto and his plot to topple the government. "Geez. Leave for a few years and things go to shit." Naruto breathed a sigh of relief. "Now that I know where he's going I'll track him down. Thank you Karo, Dono." Kaoru said, "You never gave us your names." "Oh right." Naruto laughed. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I was known as Hitakari Kitsune during the Bakumatsu, and this is my girlfriend, Hinata Hyuga." Yahiko inquired, "Why is she with you?" Naruto and Hinata departed as fast as they could, taking to the rooftops and moving at a speed that only a seasoned shinobi could have kept up. "My superiors didn't want me on my own," Naruto responded. Hinata inquired, "So are we going directly to Kyoto?" "No, knowing Kenshin Sensei he will likely be taking an older road, so we take the Meiji to Kaiway. We keep to the forests and we might stand a chance of catching him." Naruto replied as they began their journey. They continued to move throughout the remainder of the day, gradually catching up to his master, who had now transformed into a Rurouni. They set up camp in the woods that evening and resumed their journey the following day. By midday, Naruto halted when he noticed footprints and descended to the ground to inspect them. A man and a young girl. He thought, I doubt it's Kenshin, he would have stuck to the road, and he was alone from what we were told. True, but whoever it is, they did come from the direction of the road, so perhaps they may have seen him. Hinata responded. As they began to follow the trail, Naruto nodded and said, worth checking. A few hours later, his eyes hardened and he stopped upon seeing a person's grave. As he approached it, he saw that there were footprints coming from a small village and that one man was seriously injured and probably carrying a heavy load. He collapsed here, Naruto said, and that was when those two came across him, and it looks like a child he was carrying. They buried him and are heading back to the village. Hinata inquired, was the child captured? Naruto nodded as they started to run, saying, no. An enemy wouldn't have buried the body. There must be something in that village that they want to get or save. Let's go and help. When they finally reached the village, Naruto's face broke into a smile upon witnessing the man fending off scores of men. Naruto smiled as he saw two men approaching from behind him and said, Kenshin. Naruto leapt into the air, struck, and then quickly drew his blade before landing behind Kenshin and letting the two heads hit the ground. As he turned to face the man who had taught him so much, Naruto laughed and said, it's good to see you again. You're getting sloppy, Kenshin. Sensei. Naruto.kun. Kenshin cried out upon seeing him. Hinata emerged from the opposite side, and another man approached them with a young boy and another girl, saying, hey, what are you wasting time here for? As he held his katana and turned to face the wolf of Mibu, Naruto laughed and said, Saito. How long has it been now? Hitakari Kitsune. Saito nodded. It has been about 15 years since I last saw you, and unlike your sensei you seem to still kill. Kenshin questioned, what are you doing here? My job. Saito responded, one of my men informed me that Shizuho was here. Since I still had some time before the subjugation forces reached Kyoto, I decided to come on foot. However, I didn't know the man's present whereabouts. Kenshin inquired, you mean the boy's brother was a police spy? I see. Mishima Eiichiro was originally from Shingetsu. That's why I sent him, so he could infiltrate the village without raising suspicion. Probably he was discovered and tried to protect his family. Idiot. He should have waited for my arrival, Saito said, turning to face the boy and the unnamed young woman. The girl yelled, how can you talk like that about one of your own dead men? Saito said, hey, who is this? Weasel girl. Naruto looked at her too and laughed at this, understanding why Saito would say that. I'll kill you, assassinate you. While Kenshin held her, she yelled as she pulled out multiple kunai. Don't let him get to you. Naruto laughed. The wolf has a thing for messing with people's minds. More significantly, as he nodded toward the two deceased parents dangling from a wooden structure, Kenshin continued, we should take them down, and mourn for them. Naruto nodded and started to approach the structure, but was stopped. Hold on, someone yelled, and Naruto stopped to glance over his shoulder at the villagers who were now gathering. The village elder said, you can't cut them down. If you do, Senkaku will be upset, and we are powerless in front of him. We will leave them in their current state until Senkaku grants us permission. What are you saying? She yelled, they were from your village, and you're still going to obey Senkaku after this. If we defy Senkaku it means death. If we obey we live. In order to not make things worse for the village, you outsiders and the Mishima boy must leave. Eiji, you understand? The older man clarified. Saito touched the girl's head and she snarled, you. As he concluded, Saito turned to face the villagers and said, just surviving as an animal, you don't need honor and dignity. Don't be angry. There aren't many people brave enough to place their life on the line to protect their honor and dignity as human beings. Following a variety of murmurs from the populace, the elder finally declared that the bodies would stay. With his guns drawn, Naruto turned and shot the ropes holding their bodies, causing them to fall to the ground. A bunch of sheep need not worry what we humans do. Naruto spat as he gazed at them, saying, you people sicken me. The fate of this village is the fate of all of Japan in Shishio's new era. Kenshin said to Saito, they will seek only to survive, losing all honor and dignity. In order to comprehend the consequences of Kenshin's failure, Naruto scowled as he scanned the village once more. Kenshin questioned, Saito, did the government really abandon this village? Not just this one, more than 10 have been abandoned to Shishio. The police recovering them are already in retreat. Saito clarified. I don't really know what's going on, But if the police can't do it, why don't you use the army? Asked the youngster. Idiot. It's only been half a year since the Southwest War. If the army is mobilized again, it will show our unrest to foreign powers, Saito responded. She yelled, how can you think of that at a time like this, on him? Even so, we would not get permission to use the army in the first place, Saito said. Naruto frowned and said, why not? It seems like that may be the only solution. Saito answered, because no one wants to share Governor Okubo's fate. Naruto cried out, what now? They killed him. Kenshin nodded, yes, on May 14th. Damn. No wonder the government isn't using the army. It's difficult to stop an assassin unless you are employing those that think like one. Meaning that they will more than likely sit back and wait for someone else to fix this mess. Naruto thought. That sound about right, Hinata-chan? Hinata nodded and said, I would say so. Saito nodded and said, that is my reasoning as well. The girl gritted her teeth and exclaimed, who's somebody? Who's going to save this village? And who's going to avenge this boy's parents? The village, the police, the army, the government. They are all helpless before Shishio Mikoto. That's why people like us are necessary. Saito said while observing Kenshin and Naruto. We've identified the location of Shishio's inn. Will you go there before Kyoto? Kenshin turned and said, yes. Naruto also nodded, yeah. I'm going too, exclaimed the girl. Saito said, no, you stay here. She yelled, no way, I'm not letting him get away with this. Kenshin said, Misao. Dono, first. What? No one's telling me what I can. Kenshin said, stay here. Stay with Eiji. Naruto said, Hinata-chan, please stay as well. Hinata nodded and gave him a kiss, saying, of course Naruto-kun. Be safe. Naruto turned and followed the two men to the inn, nodding, I'll be fine. Kenshin said, so Naruto-kun, what are you doing here? I came to finish what I left incomplete. Naruto responded, the final secret of hidden Mitsurugi. Kenshin reminded him, you know that this one does not know it. Naruto answered, I do. But you know where I can find the man that does. It has been some time since this one last saw him. He will likely have moved. But this one also needs to learn the final secret. Kenshin gave a nod. What's with the this one stuff? Replied Naruto, you never talked like that before. Kenshin answered, this one has changed much since we parted ways. Saito said, and he's gotten weaker from it, whereas my blade has stayed sharp on the flesh of strong opponents. Naruto thought about. I can be of assistance then. Saito said, I wouldn't doubt it. Looking at the taller man, Naruto inquired, so how's that scar I left you, wolf? When I got you with that kunai when we met in Kyoto? Saito smirked as he traced a tiny spot on the left side of his stomach and said, it started itching a few hours ago. I should have taken that as a warning that you were nearby. Naruto merely grinned as they strolled until they arrived at the inn, where a young man was grinning. Naruto tensed instantly, and all of his warning signs were ringing in his mind. Naruto hissed, this guy is dangerous. Himura Badose.san and Saito Hajime.san? Replied, I don't know you however. Naruto Uzumaki, Hitakari Kitsune, was Naruto's response. The young man nodded and said, ah, Kitsune.san. Kenshin cautioned, be careful, this is the man that killed Okubo. Naruto whispered, knew I was getting nervous for a reason. In order to demonstrate that he had nothing on his sleeves, he waved his arms around and said, oh no, I'm just your guide today. See, I'm not even armed. Shishio.san is waiting for you inside, please come in. Before Saito spoke, there was a tense moment. We can't start out being this cautious, let's go. The young man soon led the three of them through the inn until they were in front of Shishio. Naruto wanted to strike him right away to put an end to the threat because he was a man who was heavily bandaged and had a predatory look on his face. Kenshin inquired, you're Shishio Mikoto? As he smoked his pipe, Shishio smiled and said, call me Shishio, my rude predecessor. Kenshin answered, don't let it bother you. The rudeness is on both sides. Hey, are you sure you just want him to stand there? Badose could kill Shishio in a single leap. Saito replied. Oh, it's alright. Himura.san isn't like you, Saito.san. He'd never try anything as dishonorable as a surprise attack. He grinned. When Saito saw that his ruse had failed, he simply grinned back. Shishio looked at Naruto and said, now I know both my predecessor and Saito Hajime.san. But you young man are a mystery to me. You probably heard about me. I disappeared one day after saying my farewells, never to be seen or heard from again. Hitakari Kitsune, Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto laughed. Ah. The legendary student of Himura Batose has returned at last. We all assumed that you were dead, or given up the sword. Shishio grinned. No, just abroad. Widening my horizons and training to become more than what I already was, said Naruto. Why do you target this place? Replied Kenshin. You're after the whole of Japan, not one or two small villages. Onsen. Shishio responded, they're good for my burnt skin, but I was afraid that the other bathers would see me. So I made them mine. Kenshin exclaimed angrily, you. For this alone you would terroir an entire village? Shishio merely began to chuckle when the woman beside him did the same. I'm kidding. You need to learn how to take a joke. You are as serious as the rumors say. Shishio replied. Temper. Saito said. You take a joke about as well as that weasel girl does. This village will make a strong military base for dominating the Tokai region, and I do like the onsen here. Shishio clarified. Shishio. Kenshin started, but Saito touched him. Take it easy, Kenshin. Sensei. Naruto responded, let's hear what he has to say. So with this base you intend to exact revenge from the Meiji government for those bandages? Saito responded. Saito Hajime, captain of the 3rd Shinsengumi unit. You are more like me than Batose, so I thought you might understand me better, but it appears I was wrong. Shishio started. I have no intention of seeking revenge on those who gave me these bandages. He stopped here and the 3 swordsmen exchanged glances. Rather I should thank them. They burned many lessons into my flesh that day. Trust and be betrayed. If you are careless you will die. Kill or be killed. And a woman will come to a real man, no matter what he looks like. Okay. He may be about to trigger one of the worst things possible for Japan, but some of those ideals are very true, said Naruto. Will you keep it down then? Saito asked. It's getting tiring chasing you all over the country. All of us survived the Bakumatsu. Why can't you understand? Shisho sighed. Revere the emperor, destroy the Bakufu, expel the barbarians, open the country. These ideas brought about the Bakumatsu, but in the end it was nothing more than a time of chaos that finally came 300 years after the Sengoku. A time when supporters of the emperor or the shogun, Satsuma, Shoshu or Tosa, all raised their flags and fought and killed in the name of justice. Born in these times was a man who would try to rule all under heaven. He paused here and the young man clapped while the woman looked at him with adoration. I was almost assassinated. When my wounds had finally healed and I tried coming out, the Meiji government had succeeded in ending the violence. Now they who tried to eliminate me won't send a single troop against me, for fear of looking weak to the Western powers. This weak government. In anger Shishio snapped his pipe and continued. I can't leave this country to such a weak government. If the violence has ended I will awaken it, I'll seize control, I'll make this country strong. Justice will be served when this country is mine. Again, he is making a valid argument. Naruto added, the government is too concerned with appearances and because of that we have the current problem. When Kenshin opened his mouth to speak, Saito merely gave him a glare. But for this justice, blood will flow. Blood of those that now live in peace. Well, after all in this world the flesh of the weak is food for the strong. But I never could persuade you of that. Shishio responded. As he began to draw his blade, Kenshin retorted, Shishio Makoto, you cannot shed the blood of others for your own personal justice. The young man said, and you Saito-san? I don't like pre-words like he does, but it seems to be my fate to be on the side that brings Shishio down. Saito responded. He said, and you? To Naruto. My first loyalty has always been to my village and my allies. Kenshin has taught me everything I know about Kenjutsu, and through his example I aspired to be the best man that I could be. My blade shall be turned against you, and it will run red upon the flesh of those that would try to destroy the peace. Naruto shot back, I will have your head before a month has passed. Hey. Shishio laughed, it doesn't matter if we fight or not. I had hoped to do it poetically in Kyoto, the city of flowers. But if you really want to fight. Shishio stopped, then raised his hand with a crescent blade and said, then Senjutsu, ruler of Shinkaku will be your opponent. Naruto blinked at the enormous man in front of him before allowing his grin to return. Kenshin said, so you're Senkaku, the man who killed Eiji's brother and parents. Then Senkaku gave a battle cry and charged at them, speeding forward. As Senkaku targeted Kenshin with one of his crescent blades, Naruto, who had faced faster opponents, leapt over him, took his back, and was ready to strike. The young man laughed and said, oh, that was much easier than I thought. Senkaku bellowed, Himura Batose is no one to fear. Senkaku looked to see that Kenshin had flipped his Sakabato and used the bladed part to cut into the crescent blade and prevent it from making contact with his flesh. "I will destroy you, before I destroy Shishio," Kenshin said, adding, "I made a promise to Eiji." As Naruto cracked his neck, he said, "Kenshin. Sensei, let me show Shishio the true terror of my blade on this weakling." As he turned to try to smash Naruto, who flinched away from the blow, Senkaku roared, "What was that? You dare mock Senkaku, he who has killed 99 people, and you shall be the 100th. To further infuriate the giant man, Saito said, "Only 99. That's not much to be proud of." Naruto laughed as he watched Senkaku charge him and then sidestep him, cutting the man's side with his blade flashing and blood splattering the ground. "If that is all you've killed, then I know that this was a waste of Kenshin Sensei's time. You are too slow." Senkaku roared, "Slow?" As he began to move more quickly. Naruto judged that he was moving at a pace comparable to Lee's when he was wearing weights. Naruto laughed as he moved with the blows to avoid being struck and said, "Slow." This continued for a few seconds before Naruto became disinterested and vanished from view. He was traveling faster than any of the men had ever seen, and when he returned, he was behind Senkaku, wiping blood from his blade. Senkaku, who was obviously still alive despite having multiple wounds on his body, cried out in agony as he collapsed to the ground. Naruto looked at Shishio and said, "That is what you are up against." Misao and Eiji fell to the ground as Saito slid the door open and said, "You can come in." Hinata simply stepped over them and said, "Just stay close." Hinata nodded to the blonde, who returned the nod while maintaining eye contact with Shishio, saying, "You did well, Naruto-kun. I never expected him to win, but the fact that you bested him so easily should be a testament to your skills. You are faster than Badosei, and Saito as well from the looks of it, and from that speed comes the real threat of your sword," Shishio said. "Partially true," Naruto replied, "considering I only showed you a part of what I am capable of, while keeping you from seeing Kenshin Sensei's sword. I would say that I have won this round." The woman with him grabbed the edge of the folding screen and pulled it away, revealing a staircase. "I'll be waiting in Kyoto. Become Hitakari and we'll try this again." Shishio responded, "Yes, but revealed more than you intended. I have heard that Badosei has sworn not to kill, and you taking the fight from him has proved that to me. Disappointing. As you are, you could not possibly defeat me. Boring." Shishio snapped his fingers. As he passed Naruto, Kenshin questioned, "You'll turn tail and run?" With a sly smile, Shishio picked up the katana that had been with him and hurled it directly at the young man by the door, narrowly missing Kenshin. Shishio ordered, "Sojiru, play with him for me." He smiled and asked, "Are you sure?" As he descended the stairs, Shishio asked, "Yes. In exchange for the Kitsune's display I'll show them my Tenkan." Naruto was about to move when he looked at Kenshin and swore, "Shit. Can you handle this?" As he poured out his ki towards Sojiru, startling Misao, who fell to the ground, Kenshin responded, "I'll manage." The young man was unfazed. Naruto nodded and turned to run towards the stairs, where Hinata soon followed. "Fine." The two encountered some opposition from Shishio's men in the hidden passage as they ran. When he was done with the minions, Naruto swore, "Shit." Hinata reported, "He's on horseback right now, he is getting away." As he accelerated, Naruto swore once more, "Double shit." They soon left the inn and entered the open countryside, where Naruto could see Shishio from a distance as they ran. He scowled and slowed before coming to a halt while muttering a curse. "We can't catch him." Naruto breathed deeply. He took this way intentionally should Saito or I come after him. The terrain is neutral, so the horse is naturally faster than a human, especially with how Shishio is likely driving it. Hinata questioned, "Should we go back?" With a sigh, Naruto turned and headed for the road, saying, "No, right now we are pretty close to the road. Let's head for Kyoto and we will find Kenshin Sensei there." The following morning, they had reached Kyoto. Naruto's eyes were wandering as the two shinobi moved through the streets, and he occasionally gripped his katana as if he anticipated trouble. Hinata inquired, "Are you okay, Naruto-kun?" As he walked and paused, Naruto responded, "Reliving old memories. Down this alley is where I first met Saito." Hinata questioned, "Really? Weren't you on opposite sides?" Naruto nodded, "Yeah." Rewind. Tonight, Naruto was sent out on his own assassination, and he was easily successful. He encountered the man Kenshin had forewarned him about as he turned down an alley on his way back. A smirking Saito Hajime said, "Lost? A boy like you should be at home in bed, not running around with his father's sword." After glancing at the man, Naruto said, "It's not my father's, He immediately realized why he should exercise caution around him. After examining him for a few more seconds, Saito pulled out his katana. Saito nodded as he positioned himself to employ his signature technique, Gadotsu, saying, "I see. You are that young Hitakari that has been with the revolutionaries." Knowing that Kenshin would probably chastise him for letting himself face such a deadly opponent, Naruto scowled as he slipped into his own fighting stance and got ready to fight. Both of them had blocked the other's attack as they turned, and Naruto scowled as he tried to think of a way to either defeat Saito or at least divert him long enough for him to flee. Saito struck first, moving with deadly speed that Naruto matched as the two passed each other. After giving it some thought, he swung his blade at the Wolf of Mibu, who blocked the blow and saw that Naruto had only used one hand to swing. He twisted around a kunai that fell into his hand as he thrust it into Saito's side, causing the man to fall backward as Naruto pulled out a smoke bomb and threw it to the ground, vanishing in the cloud. Flashback termination. When I got back to the revolutionaries, Kenshin and the others chewed me out for fighting such an opponent. Naruto was thrown. But they then told me that I did a good job in wounding the Wolf of Mibu. Hinata asked, "You called him the Wolf of Mibu, why?" Mibu is where the Shinsengumi started before they came to Kyoto to keep the peace. Naruto clarified. "We call him a wolf because he will rip out the throat of anyone that he deems to be evil. Aku Soku Zan." After that, they continued to walk until Naruto halted and asked Hinata to try to find Kenshin. She scowled while wielding her Byakugan, paused, and acknowledged that she had seen him. They soon found themselves traveling to a well-maintained inn. A young woman was inside when Naruto opened the door. Her smile said, "Oh, welcome. A room for two?" "Yes, and we'd like to speak with Himura Kenshin while we are here." Naruto cracked a grin. She frowned and asked, "You know him?" After observing her calm down, Naruto nodded and led the way to Kenshin, saying, "I'm his former student." As they entered the room, Kenshin grinned and said, "Naruto-kun." Naruto sat down opposite him and nodded, saying, "Good to see you again, Kenshin." "Sensei. How'd it go against Sojuru?" Kenshin responded, explaining that both blades were destroyed. It was a draw. Hinata inquired, "So now what, Kenshin-san? This one must find a new Sakubato." Kenshin responded, "Naruto-kun, who is your friend?" "And I met yours too." Naruto smiled and said, "This is Hinata Hyuga, my girlfriend." "What?" cried Kenshin. With a frown, Naruto questioned, "You aren't courting Kaoru-san? Then you are doing something really wrong there, sensei." "You met Kaoru? Dono?" inquired Kenshin. "Yeah, she was the one that told us that you were coming to Kyoto and this whole mess." Naruto gave a nod. This one had hoped to leave them out of this. Kenshin breathed deeply. "Now Naruto-kun, you said that you were here to learn the final secrets of hidden Mitsurugi. This one does not know them, or where the man who does is currently at. The Oniwabanshu here have agreed to help, however." "Oniwabanshu?" inquired Hinata. "Shinobi." Naruto clarified, "Not as deadly as most from the village, but they are exceptional spies and assassins." "Yes. For helping Misao get home safely and for witnessing the end of the last of their active members they have agreed to help," Kenshin clarified. "The last active members?" Naruto sighed. "I'm sensing that there is more to this." Kenshin sighed, "Yes." He continued by recounting his encounter with the Oniwabanshu and their terrible demise. Naruto sighed when he was done and looked directly into Kenshin's eyes. Naruto sighed, "You made a deadly enemy." Kenshin answered, "This one understands that." "Then let me do one last favor as your student, let me face him." Kenshin shook his head, saying, "No, think about this, Kenshin, sensei. Aoshi wants the title of strongest. As things stand with the way his mind works, I would be stronger than you." Naruto responded, "While I do admit that it takes more strength to not kill than it does to kill, in Aoshi's mind that isn't true. So let him face a Hitakari that is still active, that is still willing to take a life to get a job done. I can face him and let him either claim the title of strongest, or be beaten to the point where he realizes that his dead friends wouldn't want him to die to give them that title." After scowling at Naruto, who looked back at him with unwavering resolve, Kenshin finally let out a sigh. "You were just as stubborn as you were when we last met." Kenshin laughed. "Very well, this one will let you take this fight from him." "Thank you." Naruto grinned. "Now then we might as well enjoy the food, I can smell them cooking." In order to keep their skills sharp, Naruto and Hinata got up early the following morning and sparred in the backyard while Okuni watched. "Your fighting style is very unique, both of you," he added. "For shinobi this must be useful." As a thought occurred to him, Naruto nodded and said, "Very. Okuni-san, there is something that I want to ask you." "Oh?" Naruto inquired, does the name Hashirama Senju mean anything to you? With a very dark frown, Okuni questioned, how do you know that name? Naruto saw the older man's eyes soften and calmly responded, he founded our village. I see. Yes, I met him when I was a boy the first time. He helped the Oniwabanshu through a tough time and taught us new shinobi ways to make us stronger. I met him 2 more times over the years, with the last time being just as the black ships landed. He was the one that advised us that it would be good to have an operative here in Kyoto. Okuni continued. Naruto inquired, did he learn anything from all of you? He said he did, but I never understood what. Okuni responded by shrugging. Now let's go wake up Himura-san and see about getting you all reacquainted with Kyoto. That sounds nice. Hinata nodded as they went to wake up Kenshin, who was already awake, and encountered Misao, who was dressed normally rather than in her shinobi uniform. Okuni answered, if you're ready, let's go Himura. Oro? Inquired Kenshin. Kyoto has changed a lot in the 10 years you've been gone. Today I thought I'd show you around. Okuni responded, how about lunch at the Sukiyaki place, the Shirobiko? Misao concurred, saying, cool, I've been wanting to eat there. Wait Okuni. Dono. Said Kenshin. This one can't walk around Kyoto in broad daylight. Sometime, somewhere one of Shishio's men will notice this one and no matter where you run and hide Shishio will find you, replied Okuni. But, started Kenshin. Himura, you're fighting Shishio for the people of this country. So stand up straight for all to see. That's the way of the honest man. Okuni laughed. As he left, he began to laugh, and Naruto noticed a smile appear on his face as he gazed at the elderly shinobi. He always says that but in the old days, Jia was so good he was going to be made the new Okashira. But he said, now is the time for the young. And recommended Aoshi Sama, giving himself the minor role of agent in Kyoto. Now he's just a worn-out old man but, Misao clarified. With a smile on his face, Naruto responded, he is a man to be respected. He may be tired, but he still has plenty to offer. Oh yes. The people you asked me to look for, the search began yesterday. Okuni replied to Kennen. Kenshin was asked by Misao, search? For whom? As Okina was given a message, Misao lost it when Kenshin said, no one you know. He scowled as he opened it and started talking. Sorry Misao, we'll have to go to the Shirobiko another time. Himura, we found one of them. Well, more accurately, we found out about his death. Okuni continued, the swordsmith who made the Sakabato, Arai Shaku. A swordsmith? I see. To replace the broken Sakabato. But if he's already dead then there's never going to be another. Misao continued to speak. As Okuni continued to tell them about the swordsmith, they soon left. Arai Shaku. At the time of the Bakumatsu, he had a name among the Ishin Shishi as the finest swordsmith. Because he dedicated himself to the pursuit of the katana that kills, and not the katana that cuts, he was considered something of a heretic in the world of sword making. Misao observed, I don't understand how a swordsmith who attempted to create the katana that kills could have created the unkilling Sakabato. A man's life may sometimes contain many contradictions, right Himura? Noted Okuni. It was the Bakumatsu. Many men lived by ideals that they would later forsake. In times of war one does what one thinks is best to ensure peace, even if it means defiling the teachings that you were brought up to believe, Naruto responded. According to my sources, Shaku passed on all his secrets to his son. There were hopes for him being the next great swordsmith, but there are few orders for swords in the Meiji era. A swordsmith can barely survive. Now it seems he makes a living by making kitchen knives, scythes and other daily tools. Okuni went on, Shaku's son, Arai Seiku, maybe he can make a new Sakabato. Soon after, they reached Arai Seiku's house and store, where they discovered a young child seated behind the counter. Seiku? Kenshin inquired in confusion. Just as perplexed, Okuni trailed off, well. The young boy said, laughing, shake, shake, while he raised and lowered his hands. With a smile, Kenshin shook one of his tiny fingers and said, oh, a handshake? Okay, okay. As she walked in, a woman said, don't play with them Iori. Naruto sighed, so this is Seiku's son. Hinata nodded and said, that was almost too much for me to believe. The woman said politely, welcome sir, is there something you want? Actually this one wanted a kitchen knife. Kenshin said, do you mind if I try it out? Not at all, was her response. After that, Kenshin cut a large carrot in half and shocked his 4 companions by showing them how he had been carrying it without them noticing. After reassembling the 2 pieces, Kenshin showed that the carrot was once more a single whole. Okuni remarked, I've never seen the return cut before. Return cut? Inquired Hyanta. It's when a cut has been made but nothing has been crushed along the line of the cut, so it can be put back exactly as it was. Naruto clarified. When a fine blade and the arm of a master come together for the first time, a test cut could be of this quality. But the fact that it was done with a kitchen knife is testament to how skilled Seiku is. Misao exclaimed. Arai Seiku can make a new Sakabato. Wow. Then this is it. Kenshin said, Ma'am, could this one speak with Seiku? Done? Yes. Kenshin clarified. This one would ask him to make a katana? Well, She began. As he approached, a voice from around the corner said, I'm Arai Seiku, excuse me. You're Seiku? Misao responded, you don't look like I thought you would. I overheard your conversation. You need a katana? I'm sorry, but I no longer make katanas. I cannot fulfill your request. He laughed and rubbed the back of his head. Actually, I get that a lot. Before Hinata and Naruto restrained Misao, there was a moment of stunned silence. Okuni said, if I may ask, why not? People that come to me with requests for katanas know of my father's quest for the katana that kills. He used to tell me, the katanas that I make will bring in a new period. But I didn't accept my father's beliefs. The katanas he shaped stole many lives. What does killing have to do with brining in a new era? I wasn't convinced. During those times of violence there was nothing that I could do, but it's the Meiji era now. The age of peace has finally come. The samurai have thrown away their katanas, so I too will throw away the art of sword making. I've decided to earn my family's living making the tools of everyday life. Seiku clarified. I see. So you're a pacifist in nature, the complete opposite of your father, Okuni responded. Well, I don't know about principles, but I love peace as would anyone, he responded. Before Misao could launch into another tirade, Naruto covered her mouth with his hand and gave Kenshin the all clear. As they left, Kenshin grinned and said, of course Seiku. Dono. This one is sorry to have brought you a futile request. Thank you for your time. That's it? Himura, exclaimed Misao. Seiku. Dono desires peace with his whole heart. Even a Sakabato that cannot kill is still an instrument of war. This one couldn't bear for him to make such a thing. Kenshin continued. The search for a Sakabato will have to begin again. Before long, the five of them were back at the inn, talking about their options. Naruto and Hinata excused themselves a few days later to go explore the city. Naruto pointed out a few things he remembered from his time in the city as they were walking, and then he stopped and looked at a man he recognized from Kenshin's description. The taller man stopped in front of Naruto, who said, Aoshi. Who are you? Holding the Okashira's gaze, Naruto responded, Naruto Uzumaki, Hitakari Kitsune, first and only disciple of Hitakari Batosei. He said icily, then you know where your master is. I wouldn't tell you if I did. I could make you. You'd fail. I've learned plenty about interrogation and know more about pain than you do. Naruto laughed. I'll get out of your way for today after delivering a message to you. A message? Yes. Be patient if you want to be called the strongest. When he's ready, the person who displays the strength you wish to defeat will advance ahead of you, Naruto said. So I have to wait for Batosei to be ready to fight me. Naruto corrected him, saying, I never said Batosei. You want the title of strongest, to defeat the man who was at his best 10 years ago. This is what I'm offering you. When I'm ready and have completed my strength training, come face me. Confront a man with the strength of Himura Kenshin during the Bakumatsu. Confront hidden Mitsurugi. Ryu's actual strength, and use it as intended. You want me to wait and then confront you? Aoshi smirked and said, you are a child and don't deserve my time. I'll track down Himura Kenshin, beat him, and award the Oniwabanshu the title of strongest. After Aoshi left, Naruto sighed and continued walking with Hinata. Later that afternoon, they returned to the inn, where they were promptly informed of the events and discovered that Kenshin had a new Sakabato. As he sat with Kenshin, Naruto laughed and said, so we missed out, but it worked out for the best. However, the following morning, Kenshin told them that he would be departing. For now, yes. Kenshin nodded. Are you departing from the Iya? Misao shouted as Kenshin finished working on the katana. Why? When did you get a new Sakabato at last? Naruto, who was leaning against the wall, laughed when she got too close and smashed her head against Kenshin's in this final scene. Okuni said, Himura, you owe us a reason. Kenshin said nothing. Now, you bastard, tell me. Misao yelled once more as Okuni urged her to stop. You'd rather not tell us? After all, we are complete strangers, Okuni observed. I have no right to inquire about personal matters. Kenshin literally stopped what he was doing in shock when he heard this. The Iya is a restaurant and an inn. Naruto also blinked at this and glanced at Hinata. wondering how much they owed. The bill for 10 days stay is 7 yen and 50 sen before you leave. A stranger is not entitled to a complimentary stay. Good job, Gia, Misao applauded. Hemura, just tell us, why not? As Kenshin sat there silently for a few more moments before speaking, Okuni said, this child won't let you go that easy. There will be others involved if this one stays here. This one left Tokyo alone so as not to involve anyone in this battle. However, the Seiku family was involved in the most recent case. You will also be involved if this one remains here, Kenshin clarified. What? That is not a concern for you. It was Hania who taught me Kempo. I'm not Iori, really, Misao boasted. Really? In the eyes of Shishio's men, Misao. Dono and Iori would be the same, Kenshin said, causing Misao to collapse to the ground in disbelief. This one does not wish to endanger others. This one will fight by itself from now on. Making eye contact with Kenshin, Naruto answered, not alone. I came a long way to find your master and I owe you for all you taught me. I'll fight with you once more. So will I, Hinata replied, you've done so much for Naruto-kun, there is no way we will abandon you. This one does not wish to put anyone else in danger. Naruto retorted, that's why we are going in of our own choosing. As danger is nothing new to Hinata. Chan and me. We'll fight with you. I comprehend Himura. I'll honor your request. Okuni nodded, I'll send word as soon as we learn about Hiko Seijiro, the other person you asked me to look for. The most reliable methods are the traditional ones. Kenshin nodded and began to walk away, saying, thank you. Naruto nodded and approached Kenshin with Hinata at his side, saying, thank you for everything. Why Himura? Why have you suddenly become so aloof? Is it because you're Hitakari Badose, as I know, excuse me, but your foolish past doesn't matter to me. The Hitakari wasn't the person I met, whoever you are. Misao said, it was the Roroni. Kenshin gave a small laugh, saying, what's so funny? Kenshin retorted, but this one never expected to hear those words in Kyoto. Someone this one parted with in Tokyo said something like that to me. He apologizes for not informing you about Aoshi. I knew you were unreliable. After obstinately saying, I'll show you, I'll find him myself. The three of them left the Iya and heard Misao yelling at them as they hit the streets. Himura, in Shingetsu, you told Eiji to be joyful. Why don't you follow your own counsel? Attempting to do everything by yourself will only lead to your misery. You'd better keep it in mind. You're a jerk. Naruto laughed and said, quite the mouth on her. As they left the city proper and entered the forest, where they would have a clear view of the signal that Okuni would give them once Hiko Seijiro had been found, Kenshin responded, perhaps, but she does care. They remained in the woods for 3 days, sparring frequently so that Naruto and Hinata would be at their best when they eventually saw the signal. When Naruto saw the fireworks, he said, they found him. Yes. As they made their way back into Kyoto, Kenshin nodded and accepted a sheet of paper from Ie Okuni. Hiko Seijiro's whereabouts. He responded, we never suspected it was a secret name so he was difficult to find. Oh, I'm sorry. Kenshin nodded as he turned to go, saying, this one had hoped to apologize to her, but in the end this one will have to leave the Misao. Dono and Aoshi matter to you. This one just realized it now. Don't stress over it. It's in capable hands, Okuni assured. Kenshin nodded and began to walk away. Well then. I'm sorry, Himura, Okuni said, causing the three of them to pause. I truly wanted to help you until the very end, but my first duty is to protect Misao and the Aoya. I lied when I told Seiku-san that I understood your feelings, even though it was a cowardly move. But at my core, I am your ally. Misao, Seiku's family, the people at the Aoya, and most likely the people you left in Tokyo aren't the only ones. We all want you to be safe. Remember that. As they departed, Kenshin nodded and said, many thanks. Naruto noted, he is right you know. You'll be crushed under the weight if you try to do everything on your own. Let your friends shoulder a portion of that load. When they eventually located the man, it was getting dark, and Kenshin stopped them. Kenshin just grinned as they continued walking and soon found themselves entering the mountains. This one wishes to test and make sure that it is really him. As he leapt up into the treetops, Naruto grinned and waited for Kenshin to move behind him before striking, which caused the man to jump out of the way. Naruto struck in midair and flipped down, swinging his katana at the man who deflected it as he landed. Fine with me, but let me help out. Attacking a mere potter out of nowhere, that really has no style, Hiko said. As he put his blade away, Kenshin said, Hiko Seijiro is no mere potter. I'm the next emperor of Japan if you're just a potter. Naruto grinned and sheathed his blade. Hiko said to Kenshin, oh, it's you. I don't know you, but, he said to Naruto. Kenshin turned to face the man and remarked, it's been a long time, master. Hiko merely sighed as he glanced at them and gestured for them to enter the small cottage. Hinata joined them, and after they were inside, Hiko sat down and spoke. Well, what do you want with me now that you've had the audacity to come out here and show your face? He inquired. Nitsu Kakunoshin appears to be a new and rising name in the ceramics industry. Why ceramics? Kenshin asked, sidestepping Hiko's query. Hiko shrugged and said, it doesn't matter. Pottery, whatever it is, was the easiest way to make a living without having to deal with a lot of people. My brilliant abilities are evident in everything I do. When this happened, Naruto and Hinata blinked and glanced between him and Kenshin before Naruto grinned. Hiko said, you came to tell me something that's difficult for you to say, but you didn't answer my question. Your master was me. I am able to read my stupid student like a book. Kenshin nodded and knelt down, saying, then I'll say it straight out. Naruto followed suit, saying, I ask you now for the instruction of the hidden Mitsurugi school that I left 15 years ago. To the surprise of all three, Hiko said without hesitation, absolutely not. I never taught the blonde one, and you were the one who left 15 years ago. After all this time, why now? When Kenshin grabbed his mantle, Hiko stopped turning, but he continued. Kenshin begged, please, I beg you. Well, that's something. Hiko grinned, you seem to be at your lowest point. Okay, I'm listening if you're asking. Kenshin then began to describe the issue in detail, and when he was done, Hiko turned to face Naruto, who nodded and began talking. Kenshin trained me during the Bakumatsu, as he told you. In order to become a more formidable shinobi for my village, I studied a variety of different fighting techniques after I left. I recently found out that 2 rogue shinobi with the highest danger rating were pursuing me for something my father had hidden with me before he passed away. Naruto clarified, I need to get stronger so that I can protect both my home and my own life. Hiko paused before continuing. Well, in other words, this man, Shishio Makoto, is planning to conquer Japan. Conversely, you are gradually turning back into Hitokuri Batosei. You need to be stronger than you are now if you want to defeat Shishio without turning into the Hitokuri, Hiko thought. You know what they say, he who chases 2 hares catches neither. Kenshin sighed and said, Master. Hiko said gravely, I'm sure I taught you this. A sword is a weapon. The art of killing is kenjutsu. This is its actual nature, regardless of the lovely words you use. The harsh realities of today, or your own stupid ideals. Whatever you're attempting to defend, it's utterly self-centered. With a frown, Naruto observed, that's harsh, and you, looking for this information even though I never gave it to you. I have no doubt that my stupid student did not instill in you the wisdom to never support a side in a dispute. He did. Naruto answered, and I am a sellsword as a shinobi. I'm working for whoever can pay me. As he turned back to Kenshin, Hiko snorted, HMPH. It seems like you dedicated yourself to the chaos of the Bakumatsu 15 years ago. That was your biggest error. He then briefly recounted their altercation before adding, after that, we got into a fight and parted ways. You see the outcome in front of you, he said, pausing once more before pointing to Kenshin. My stupid pupil, you may have improved with the sword, but your spirit hasn't changed since you were 14. You are carrying unheapable wounds on your heart and left cheek. You are on the brink of becoming a Hitokuri or someone who has vowed never to kill again. Even the ghost of the Bakumatsu's Ishin Shishi, Shishio Makoto, has been awakened by you. You Ishin Shishi supported and believed in justice. Without a doubt, you used the violence to create the Meiji government. However, you concealed anything that wasn't convenient in order to conceal your transgressions. Shishio Makoto will return as the Bakumatsu ghost, even more formidable. In a vicious cycle, violence breeds more violence. You too have also contributed to the raising of this ghost with your hidden Mitsurugi. Though Kenshin had previously warned him that this sword should never be used to take sides, both of them had done so in the end, and Naruto was even more ashamed now that he was back in the village. Naruto looked down in shame at this, knowing that Hiko had a point and that he was correct about how their swords had caused this trouble. You were correct. As he slammed his hand to the floor, Hiko yelled, the school's original mission was to shield people from the agony of the ages. But the principles of freedom must be the foundation of this strength. This is the kind of catastrophe that will occur if it is not free. In order to prevent us from ever becoming government dogs. You could never have discovered our school's secret methods if you had never grasped this or been able to impart it to your student. A silence descended upon them, and Hiko hesitated for a moment before continuing. Hiko sighed and said, maybe it was a mistake teaching you hidden Mitsurugi after all. At that moment, 2 people shouted and rushed into the hut. Just now, what was that? They yelled. What? Who are you? Naruto turned and grinned upon seeing Misao and Yahiko standing there, and Hiko asked, glancing at them. Kenshin exclaimed in surprise, Misao. Dono, Yahiko. Then he noticed the third individual behind them, Kaoru, Dono. These are your friends? Hiko inquired. Kenshin nodded, yes. This place is similar to Grand Central Station. People should be aware when they are not welcome. Kenshin, Naruto, complained Hiko. Get some water and run outside. Leave? Kenshin inquired. Water is limited to one person. Hiko retorted, you can't expect the kids to go through the entire night without food or drink. Why would I? Started Kenshin once more. Aren't you and the girl going for a moonlit walk? Hiko inquired. Master, that's not why I. Kenshin began once more. Hiko smiled and said, that's your old spirit. Go, don't just stand here talking about it. Kenshin grumbled, you always were a slave driver. Naruto simply shook his head, got to his feet, kissed Hinata's cheek, and walked away, ignoring the flush that appeared on her face as he did so. Soon, the two of them were outside, going to the stream to fetch water. So, Kaoru and you? Kenshin began spluttering, and Naruto smiled and asked. No, at last, he was able to escape. Are you certain that you won't begin dating? With a head tilt, Naruto inquired, what's wrong with you? You're not making a move on a young woman who is obviously in love with you, even though you obviously care about her enough to try to keep her out of this argument. How about Hinata? Dono and you, dating? Naruto replied, hell, I'd bet my mom and her dad are already making a marriage contract. Sitting in the Hyuga compound back in Konoha, Kushina and Heishi sneezed as they talked about the potential for their children to marry. Heishi observed, someone is talking about us. Kushina nodded and said, yeah. Oh well, let's get back to work. The two were just arriving at the hut with Naruto, each of them carrying a bucket of water, and as they stepped inside, there was a hush that made Naruto a little uneasy. Master, where should I put? As a vagrant, you have been traveling the nation for the past 10 years, making amends. Did it take you 15 years to discover the hidden Mitsurugi school's motivations? Or were you making amends as a Hidakari for the lives you killed? Before turning to face Naruto, Hiko questioned Kenshin, and you, even though you are a shinobi and subject to the commands of those in authority, your friend here has stated that you demonstrated loyalty to them despite the fact that you were essentially the village whipping boy. Did you come back out of a sense of duty or to defend the people you cared about the most? Kenshin faced Hiko and said, it was both. And because of what this one said to you 15 years ago, he added. People are going through hardship and misery right in front of my eyes. I don't want to leave them the way they are, for whatever reason. In response, Naruto said, it was both for me too. The village has been my home, where my father died to protect it, and where my friends and loved ones reside. It is my home, and I will fight to protect its residents, whether or not they are my loved ones, even if they don't care for me. Hiko smiled and said, follow me. You two are dumb students, but when it comes time to act, you can talk like men. The last secrets of the hidden Mitsurugi school will be passed down to you too. The fact that the man who had previously refused to teach them was now willing to assist them appeared to astound everyone. What? As he began to depart, Hiko clarified, it'd be easier to do it myself, but after all this time I'd just rather not. As a great-hearted swordsman, I can't let Shishio take over the country, and I don't have time to look for another pupil. Everyone collapsed to the ground after hearing that last statement, stunned by the man's apparent lack of empathy. You have an obligation. Hiko commanded, stop Shishio Makoto. He turned to face Kenshin, who looked back at him with the fiery resolve that Naruto was so familiar with. Before long, the three swordsmen were outside, making their way to the woods, when Kaoru called for Kenshin. I didn't consider the danger when I traveled to Kyoto. Are you upset with me? She inquired. Kenshin said, half of me is. However, the other half of me is. I'm relieved. Be cautious because you never know where Shishio's men might hide. Before continuing on his journey with the swordsman, Naruto paused to give Hinata a final kiss. Soon, they found themselves standing on a cliff that was jutting out from a waterfall, facing the older master and waiting for him to say something. I want to say something to you both before we start. Hiko paused there, thinking, no, you couldn't be that good. If you master this last technique, you'll probably gain strength equal to mine. You might just be able to match me at your best, however, don't become overconfident. The Meiji period won't be kind to you if you carry your burdens by yourself and sacrifice yourself to protect others. Similarly, finding happiness on your own won't be simple. The girl who traveled all the way to Kyoto to see you will be left feeling alone and miserable if you fall here. And the burden of telling your loved ones that you fell will fall on the girl who accompanied you on your trip. Master, you don't mean... Kenshin trailed off as Naruto looked directly into Hiko's eyes, silently resolute to live no matter what. Keep this in mind. You are only human, regardless of how strong you become. Violence is unnecessary for the Buddha. As he drew his katana, Hiko concluded, I'm done talking. Let's get started. Naruto and Kenshin followed suit, saying, before I teach you this technique I am going to test your abilities. As the two got ready to battle the sole wielder of this ancient sword, Naruto simply nodded. The battle began swiftly, and the two soon realized that although Hiko was conceited, he was a deadly swordsman and had earned the right to be so. Naruto and Kenshin were soon taking a step back, and Hiko nodded in their direction. You both depend too much on your speed. However, Naruto appears to have better reflexes in that area, most likely as a result of competing against opponents who are as quick as he is. You have to be able to hit me once if I'm going to teach you this technique, Hiko clarified. With his coat off and his fighting stance back in place, Naruto said, fine. Let's see how you handle me without my weights. Hiko blinked as Naruto moved first, outpacing most humans in speed. And struck, first avoiding a cut to his left side that Hiko blocked, then avoiding the sheath that Naruto attempted to use to strike his side, and then continuing his assault by effortlessly switching between forms until he finally slipped under Hiko's swing, avoiding the knee that Hiko attempted to hit him with, and then hitting Hiko with the back of his katana right at the neck, although this left Naruto backhanded and sent him skidding across the width of the cliff. Hiko nodded and said, impressive. You took my back before I could stop you. You can leave and wait while I continue to put my stupid student to the test. As he walked off to the side and leaned back, napping while he waited for the two to finish, Naruto nodded and said, okay. Good luck Kenshin. Sensei. Kenshin and Hiko fought for several days, with Kenshin making little progress, until Hiko finally issued an ultimatum. As they faced each other, Hiko said, if you can't get an attack in this round I won't teach you the techniques. Naruto sat up and scowled at this, knowing that Kenshin needed to learn these techniques because if he didn't, he wouldn't have much chance of surviving the upcoming battles. Kenshin appeared to fortify his resolve before the match began, jumping into the air with Hiko right behind them and both of them using a hidden Mitsurugi Ryu technique. Naruto watched closely as their blades collided, and Kenshin barely scraped Hiko's right arm before falling to the ground and striking it with enough force to knock him out. Naruto sighed as he got up and went to check on his sensei, saying, good grief, he has gotten rusty. Yes. But he's never been able to hit me before. Hiko shrugged, but you fascinate me. Despite being younger than my foolish pupil, you have advanced the sword farther than he has. I have risked my life to compete against men and women who are far superior to me, and I have emerged victorious. No matter what it takes, I will survive and live for my loved ones, Naruto said, making eye contact with Hiko. I have had to learn to find the one weak link in my opponent's armor and use it against them, whether it be their own pride or a past injury. After giving Kenshin a sly smile and letting him lie there for a short while, Hiko woke him up, explained what had gone wrong, and then informed him that he had successfully delivered that single clean hit. He then led them back to his house, making Kenshin face him first. All right, stay put now. As he began to describe the technique, Hiko cautioned, first, a review. One mistake and you'll be killed. The kinds of kenjutsu attacks. The first is the downward cut to the head, karatake, followed by the slantwise downward cut to the shoulder, kesagiri, the upward stroke, sakakazi, the side cut, right nagi, the upward cut, left nagi, the right upward cut, and the downward cut, karatake. Lastly, the tasuki, the stroke that pierces the chest the shortest distance. There is not a single killing technique used in any school that does not target one of those 9 points. It goes without saying that the defensive stances were created to match these 9 points. However, as he appeared behind Kenshin, he halted and said, there is no defense if you move with hidden Mitsurugi Ryu's godlike speed and strike at all 9 points at once. The 9-headed dragon flash, or hidden Mitsurugi.Ryu Kuzuryasen, is this. When Naruto blinked, he realized the consequences of this technique, which, if used properly, could not be blocked. Kenshin appeared to be thinking the same thing, and both of them recognized how dangerous this technique was. The charging attack that renders evading the strikes impossible, along with the same strength of the wild attack Ryusosen in all 9 attacks. As he gestured for Naruto to stand where Kenshin was, Hiko said, this is the technique I'm best at. Naruto's mind had already mastered the technique and realized that avoiding this attack would require speed greater than hidden Mitsurugi.Ryu. Hiko said, now stop standing there admiring it and try it. Just like that. Kenshin cried out, what are you discussing? You can't learn this technique by studying footwork, Hiko retorted. You only learn when you're on your hands and knees and have experienced its force. I've always trained you in this manner. As he recalled his training, Kenshin appeared to go pale. Oh yeah, it's fortunate that he lived. Hiko shrugged, facing Kenshin with his katana leveled and a serious expression on his face. Well, it's all thanks to me obviously giving you just as much as you could take. Come on and try it. Full power. As he faced his master, Kenshin pulled out his Sakabato and his face became determined. He unleashed the Kuzuryusen and went straight for Hiko, who used his own Kuzuryusen, and the two collided, with Kenshin winding up on the ground. As Hiko spoke, Kenshin appeared to begin to worry that his Kuzuryusen wasn't perfect. No, it was flawless. As Naruto pulled out his coat and drew his katana, Hiko said, "Let Naruto try his luck and then I will explain." Knowing that it would take everything he had to defeat this man, Naruto unleashed the Kuzuryusen, and Hiko did the same, and Naruto suffered the same fate as Kenshin. If the fighters are different, the force will also be different, even if the hidden Mitsurugi and technique are the same. Your arm strength is important in wild attacks, while your weight is important in charging attacks. You two are far beneath me in both of these areas. To put it another way, before my Kuzuryusen, your Kuzuryusen is, of course, as useless as any other technique. Hiko took a moment to process this, and Naruto began to understand that this couldn't be the last move. There's only one technique that can defeat my Kuzuryusen. The Amikameru Ryu no Hirameki, Flash of the Heavenly Flying Dragon, is the greatest secret of the hidden Mitsurugi school. Kenshin and Naruto exchanged glances, with Kenshin being more surprised that this was the last secret. For what reason are you looking so surprised? I never claimed that the Kuzuryusen was the best method, Hiko said. The Kuzuryusen were not developed during training or actual combat. It was created as a test and a step in the transmission of the techniques. You start with the Kuzuryusen in order to learn the succession technique. The initiation into the school's secrets is complete if you are able to vanquish the previous master's Kuzuryusen. Knowing that there was more to it than that, Kenshin trailed off, however. Give careful thought to the Kuzuryusen you recently learned. You'll gain a general understanding of the Amikameru Ryu no Hirameki if you do, Hiko suggested. As a thought came to him, Kenshin muttered, about the Kuzuryusen. He heated his blade and assumed a Battojutsu stance, and Naruto nodded that he understood. You did a great job, correct? Battojutsu's greater divine speed surpasses the divine speed. This is the Amikameru Ryu no Hirameki's actual nature. However, the Battojutsu will be hampered by the Sakabato. Is divine speed still within your reach? Kenshin fell silent as he released his Sakabato and assumed a formless stance in response to Hiko's question. You intend to use Haisu no Jin, one who prepares to exhaust all his strength, who cannot recover if he fails, in a formless stance with your Sakabato put away. That's stupid. I understand. Hiko gazed at Kenshin before lowering his katana. But even if this one throws away his life, this one must master the succession technique, Kenshin said, his eyes unwavering. Then you really are a stupid pupil. Hiko responded, you haven't learned anything at all. Master. As Hiko turned to leave, Kenshin yelled. Just one evening. Find the part of yourself that you lack by searching your heart until morning, Hiko said as he continued to walk toward his house, Naruto following closely behind. If you can't do that, in mastering the ultimate technique you really will be throwing your life away. As he caught up to him, Naruto said, Hiko. Sama. I would like to try and learn this technique. Before nodding and leaving with Naruto out of Kenshin's line of sight, Hiko gave him a long look. When they came to a halt, Naruto turned to face the man and spoke. Naruto begged, I would ask you not to tell anyone about what I am about to do. Why? Hiko smirked as he asked, and her eyes widened as Naruto made the hand sign and produced a Kage Bunshin. This is a trick I learned before I met Kenshin Sensei, but I don't use it around him. Are you not a native of this realm? Hiko smirked as she asked. Naruto nodded. No, Hiko said. Okay, what did you have in mind? Naruto nodded and turned to face the clone, who hanged into Hiko, causing the man to scan it with his eyes before continuing. He said, you got the nose wrong. Would you kindly use Kuzuryusen against the clone? Naruto retorted, it's not meant to be exact, just to be a replica of you so that I can learn this technique. Hiko nodded as the two Hikos struck, and it ended up being a perfect draw. Naruto then made another clone that turned into Hiko and faced him, and when the fake Hiko struck, Naruto did the same, knowing that he could not afford to lose, and he unleashed the Amikameru Ryu no Hirameki. The technique was perfect as he cut clean through the clone, and Naruto blinked as he turned to the older master. This method. Kenshin could use it to murder you, wouldn't he? Naruto inquired. Hiko nodded and said, it's a possibility. Naruto observed, that would destroy him. Congratulations, Naruto Uzumaki. Hiko responded, I trust that my stupid pupil will manage. You are hidden Mitsurugi, Ryu's 14th master. You will also be assigned the alias of Hiko Seijiro along with it. I see. Naruto replied, I'll hang on to it, in case I ever decide to hang up the shinobi headband. All right. Hiko answered, normally, I would also give you this mantle, but since your coat is weighted, there's no need. Indeed, it seems to weigh more than yours. As Hiko blinked at the weight, Naruto retorted, my goal is to have it weigh half as much as I do. Mine is at close to 100 pounds right now. As they made their way back to his house, Hiko laughed and said, then I wish you the best with that. Kenshin appeared to be thinking deeply. As Naruto put it, I'll be going now Kenshin. Sensei, you got it down pat? Kenshin inquired. Naruto answered, I found a way. You'll be fine. I'll see you shortly. Yes. Kenshin nodded, and Naruto began to descend the mountain, where he would soon arrive at a police outpost before being sent to meet Saito to assist in foiling Shishio's initial plot.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.